For those of you joining us, our Danville Town Council meeting will begin shortly.
Okay, good evening and welcome to the Danville Town Council meeting of Tuesday, December 21st, 2021. This is our last regular meeting of the year 2021. And we're joined tonight by our town manager, Joe Calabrigo, Rob Ewing, our city attorney, and Marie Sunseri, our city clerk. Marie, would you please call the roll?
Yes. Councilmember Fong.
Here.
Councilmember Morgan. Councilmember Stepper.
Here.
Vice Mayor Storer.
Here.
And Mayor Arnerich.
Here.
All council members are in attendance.
Great, thank you. Are there any announcements? Marie?
Yes, this meeting is being held by teleconference only on Zoom, and a recording of the meeting will be made available on the town website, as well as any written public comments that are submitted for this evening's meeting. All of Danville's meeting agendas have information on how to participate in public meetings. To provide live comments during this meeting, use the raise hand feature in Zoom. And when the mayor opens up that item to public comment, raise your hand. Your name will be announced and only your audio will be enabled. You're asked to state your name for the record and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any other announcements? Seeing none, this will take us to the Pledge of Allegiance, and tonight will be led by Vice Mayor Robert Storer. Robert?
Well, thank you very much. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great, thank you, Robert. Now, this takes us to item number 3, changes to the order of the agenda. Joe, do we have any changes tonight?
Mayor, we have no changes to the order of the agenda this evening.
Great, thank you. And now item number 4, this is for what we call the good of the town. This is an opportunity for anybody in the public to speak to the council for up to 3 minutes on anything that's not specifically on the agenda tonight. If you'd like to speak on anything on the agenda, we will call those up individually later as we get to those items. And let me see what we have. Or if there are anybody in the audience who'd like to, please use the raise hand feature and our city clerk will call on you.
At this point, I will note that public comment was received for the good of the town from 350 Contra Costa. And that correspondence was distributed to the town council and uploaded to the website prior to the meeting this evening.
Great, thank you, Marie.
And I don't see anyone with hands raised.
Okay, great, thank you. I see the same. So we'll close for the good of the town, and this will take us to item number 5, which is the consent calendar, and it's a very long one. There are 12 items tonight. The consent calendar is an item that can be acted on in one motion by the council, and many of these are considered routine and/or second readings. However, if there's anybody in the audience virtually who would like to pull an item for discussion or to ask any questions, please use the raise hand feature at this time, and Marie will call on you.
Okay, so that's for items 5.1 through 5.12, and there are no hands raised.
Okay, seeing none, is there anybody on the council who would like to pull an item for discussion? Seeing none, is there a motion?
I'd like to make the motion to approve the consent agenda of items 5.1 through 5.12.
And I'd like to second that.
Great. It's been moved by Councilmember Stepper, seconded by Councilmember Fong. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Marie, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Fong,
Yes.
Councilmember Morgan, Councilmember Stepper,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Storer,
Yes.
and Mayor Arnerich.
Yes.
And the consent calendar was approved unanimously.
Thank you. And now this will take us to item number 6, which is our monthly town manager's report. Joe, I think you're going to do a little short version of that tonight.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the town council. At the risk of disappointing all of you, I will forego my usual lengthy report. I transmitted something to all of you last Friday, so hopefully you've had a chance to look at it. I simply wanted to remind the town council and anyone who might be viewing this meeting that the Danville town offices will be closed beginning on December the 24th through and reopening on January the 3rd for observance of the Christmas and New Year's holiday and our annual employee furlough. On the 28th, 29th, and 30th of December, we will have limited public hours at the police department. The police department counter will be open between 10 and 2. We will also have building inspections by appointment those 3 days. We'll have minimal maintenance crews out and about, and of course, all of our field personnel, our sworn staff in the police department will be continuing to work their regular beats and patrols during that time. So just that reminder, and would like to wish the mayor, the town council, and all of your families a great holiday. And with that, turn it back over to you, Mr. Mayor.
Great. Thank you, Joe. And we do appreciate that report that you distributed. This will now take us to item number 7, and this is something we all look forward to. And this is under communications. It's a police department report by our Chief Alan Shields. And this is for information and welcome, Chief Shields.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the opportunity to present information on the police department. So Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members, thank you for the opportunity. First, I'd like to wish everybody a happy holidays, both to all of you and everybody that's watching this. And this is the report that I'm presenting to all of you. We did drop this off to each one of you, and then this will also be available on the Chief's page tomorrow. So this will be posted for anyone that wants to view it. They can download it there, and it will be a short update, and I'm going to cover some mental health topics. I'm going to cover some of the training that we've done, some of the outreach that we continue to do. And then what I'd like to also say is that we're going to have a shift change like we do about every 6 months. And at the February council meeting, I'm going to present some of the new officers. So we'll bring them in. This will be, I think, the first time in a couple of years, maybe where we're in person. So I'll have a chance to actually present some of the new officers that are coming down to work here in town. But if you go to, when I talk about mental health, what I want to do is I'm certainly not going to cover all of the options that are available in the world and everything that our county health partners are doing and our fire partners. But I want to talk about the things and the services that your police officers are using now on a more regular basis to better serve the residents of Danville. So if you go to page 2, and I'm going to share my screen for those that are watching. So bear with me while I get the PowerPoint up here. Okay, so if you go to page 2, it talks about what a 5150 is, and that is what we refer to as a mental health commitment, and it is the authority code in the Welfare and Institutions section that authorizes a peace officer, among others, to commit someone to a mental health evaluation. And let me back up. So on the mental health evaluation, what the criteria is, and it's a very small section of the Welfare and Institution Code, and it simply states that If someone is a danger to themselves, a danger to others, or gravely disabled due to a mental condition, then an officer has the authority to commit them to a mental health evaluation for a 72-hour period. Here in Danville, what that would mean is if an officer does find someone that is suffering from mental illness and they believe that they're a danger to themselves, others, or somehow gravely disabled, we will call for a transport. And right now, what we use San Ramon Valley Fire Department, which means the fire department partners will come out and they will take them to either a local hospital or straight to county hospital in Martinez. And what I'm happy to say, and two of the programs that I'm going to talk about are actually aimed at diverting cases from that. And I know that our Chief Paige Meyer from the fire district has presented on the San Ramon Valley Fire Protection District's plan to assist and help and provide more tools in that. So I'm not going to go too in depth on that because I know that he has presented fairly recently at the council meeting. But I do want to cover two of the services that we're actually using in the town right now. The first one is we call it the MET team, the MHET, which is the mental health evaluation team. And if you look in the picture on the screen here, we've got Deputy Jen Yen with the sheriff's office, and she's paired with a mental health clinician, a clinical specialist, James Lancaster. And what they do is, if you think about it, you've got pre-crisis, you've got crisis, and post-crisis. Typically, your police officers, our role is only in crisis, right? Pre-crisis is usually where family members, where patients will go and they'll seek treatment and they'll try to seek assistance for their mental health condition. Crisis is the police department. Post-crisis is typically where there needs to be some form of case management, some form of follow-up. And that is really where the mental health evaluation team comes in. The MET team will go out and they will work with patients, with families, and they will seek to try to convince and gain the trust of the patient and see if they can get them towards treatment. They're also connected in with county services, with services throughout the state and VA, where they can help get a patient to services. And I'll cover a case example on that in a minute. The next would be the mobile crisis response team. I don't have a slide for them, but the mobile crisis response team is a team that is provided by County Behavioral Health Services. And what they do is they will handle lower level crisis cases. So not the pre, not the post, but when they're in crisis, but it may not quite rise to the level of needing law enforcement, similar to what Chief Meyer is doing in San Ramon. And we've had the MCRT come out, the mobile crisis response team come out in Danville and provide care for patients here in town. And so we've been using them more, and we're happy that we're seeing some success with them. As far as Chief Paige Meyer and his public safety solution for having first responders go out and respond to these mental health crises, we're going to go to training with them. So this program is moving forward. We're going to have officers and sergeants, and even I will attend one of the training where we're going to train up on how this program is going to be implemented and what we can do to support our fire partners as they support the community in the area of mental health. I did want to present some information to all of you about what our mental health picture looks like here in town. And so think back in 2016, 2017, we knew that as a police department, we had to start keeping better data. And so we started keeping more detailed data on the mental health calls that we were going to, how many times we were going to them. And this simple chart simply shows the percentages of trips where patients were going on multiple trips. And if you look at the chart, the total number of patients that we've had in from 2018 to 2020, we had a total of 284. So of the total number of patients we had, those that required one trip were about 78%. And I'm gonna refer to the guide here, so I apologize for looking down, but so 271 of the patients required just one trip. And then we had 19 requiring 2 trips, and then 4 patients requiring 3 trips, 2 patients required 4, and then 1 required 5 trips. And so the number of trips that we're making, the majority of them were one patient, one trip, and then done, all the way up to we had one patient that required 5 trips over that same 3-year period of time. So there's not a lot of repeat patients, but that is something that we do take a look at. And that frankly is where we end up getting our referral base from. If we look at this final slide here, this will show you how many mental health commitments Danville Police have processed in the last 10 years. And so you can see on a scale, this is effectively trading sideways with a low of 74 back in 2011, a high of 128 just a few years ago. And in the last 2 years, we've seen a reduction in those from 2019 to 2020. And it looks like we'll be in that ballpark for 2021 as we close out the year. I'm going to unshare my screen real quick because that is the last slide. Stop sharing. But I did want to present you with a case example. So we did have a good case that I think shows one, the strong reporting in our community and the care that our community shows for people suffering from mental illness. It shows the police response and it shows the effectiveness of programs such as MET. So there was a person who was suffering from mental illness, which ended up generating a lot of calls for service from the police department. And these were, that the person needed mental health help. It was also that, hey, we think he's actually committing a crime and there's something that needs to be addressed criminally. And the person was arrested at one point. The person was committed via 5150. And we referred this person to our MET team. And it was the deputy and the clinician that you saw, Jen and James, that actually responded and handled this case. And I'm very familiar with the case, and they both earned the trust of this patient. They coordinated and communicate with the family members. They coordinated with the services where the person needed to receive services from, and they were able to connect this person with services. And this isn't something that happens in one trip. This is something where the MET team went out several times a week, over and over, until they were able to get this person connected with services. But all during that time, and frankly, since, the Danville Police Department didn't receive the 911 call to go out there and address either a criminal or a mental health problem with the patient. So I do think we need to highlight the successes. And I think if we continue to invest in programs like this, I think if we continue to use programs and refer to programs like this, I think we're going to continue to move in a better direction when it comes to mental health treatment and case management. Real quick, before I wrap up, I do want to talk about some training that your officers have gone to. And actually, we sent a lot of our other staff as well. But we sent a group of about 15 down to the Museum of Tolerance. The Museum of Tolerance is at the Simon Wiesenthal Center. And it is an interactive 8-hour event where officers and staff learn about cultural diversity. And they're immersed in this experience. And one of our staff members came back, and when she described the interaction or the presentation by the Holocaust survivor who was explaining to him the helpless feeling of being marginalized and oppressed, it was absolutely incredible. And I can tell you from my personal experience that 24 years ago, I went to the same place. I went to the Simon Wiesenthal Center. I went through the same tools of tolerance, and I remember it to this day. I was also fortunate back in 2017 to go to the Holocaust Museum and go through a similar immersive experience there. And what this does is this just capitalizes and adds to a lot of the training that your sheriff's office is already providing officers. And I know I talked about it back in June, but if you go to the sheriff's principled policing page, you can see a lot of the schools and the education that officers receive both in the academy and once they're out on patrol. And so there is a great deal of care that goes into training our officers and making sure that we are presenting our best selves out to the community. There is a little section on the back that does talk about 10-8. That's the program where we go in service every Wednesday night at 5 o'clock. I think we're always looking at whether or not we should continue or pivot and shift. And as you all know, 10-8 came out of the fact that we moved into COVID and we were losing touch with our community because we had no in-person events. I'm happy to say that we continue to have good viewership there. And I actually had someone today, a nice lady right around the corner, that dropped off a cake and says, "Hey, we watch you every week on 10/8. It's nice to stay informed. I appreciate being updated, and it's a great service. Can you please keep it up?" So we do get a fair amount of that. And then we have continued to kick off our in-person events. If you look, we were actually down at Old Town Danville Bakery about a month ago, and we did some coffee with the cops there, and we've been all over town, and we've been making ourselves available. And the one question I make sure to ask everyone is there something we can do as a police department to better serve the community? And that's the feedback that we're looking for. I'm happy to say that we don't get any critical feedback, but we certainly do get feedback, and we do try to work to make sure that we're serving the community in the best way that we can. Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members, I appreciate the time, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Chief Shields, thank you so much for that. It's exciting to hear how much cooperation actually does occur, even though oftentimes we don't hear about it. It's just a normal process. But it's also exciting to hear, and we look forward to meeting the new officers as they come on their new shift after the first of the year here. And it's all good news that everybody's continuing to try to find new ways to get even better outcomes each time. So thank you. Who would like to go first? Joe, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just very briefly, because the chief did a great job. The council has heard a report from Kathy Shiverton recently on Measure X, and we have been following with great interest the whole effort to fund and design the Miles Hall Hub, the A3 program that is underway through the county. And I just wanted to add to what the chief said. That program will essentially take what is now the Mobile Crisis Response Team and greatly enlarge and expand that. So there's a direct tie-in to some of what the chief covered, and that's what the link is with that. So thank you.
That's great. And were there any comments or questions from council?
I got a question.
Robert, go ahead, please.
Great, thank you. Chief, wonderful report. Thank you for doing good work with mental health issues. When we make contact with a person in the field that looks like they're suffering from some mental health issues, that person can say no, couldn't they? I mean, if we're offering help to take them to either Martinez or Livermore to ascertain their condition, if they say no, what do we do?
Well, so that depends, and really it depends on the circumstances. If this is someone that is not quite they don't meet the threshold of a 5150, so they're not gravely disabled, they're not a danger to themselves, and they're not a danger to others, and they don't meet the threshold for an involuntary commitment. That doesn't mean we stop. That means that we do try to find creative ways, and we do try to find services that can help. And Kathy Shiverton's a great partner. We've got partners up at County Mental Health. We've got the MCRT, we've got MET. So we do have resources. They don't have to meet that threshold for us to make the referral. But yeah, they do. People can refuse services. We do also, when it comes to homeless, we can make a referral to our core homeless outreach partners. And what they'll do is, instead of, again, sending a cop out over and over and over again, you'll get a group of professional staff and civilians that will go out and make that referral. But as an example, we did have someone, this is 3 or 4 years ago now, that was in need of both medical and mental health, but didn't meet the threshold. And we offered over and over again, and so much to the point where we were actually able to find this person housing that would support both the medical and the mental health. And when the person bluntly asked us, "Where is it?" And when we told them where it was, they said, "No, I'd rather just stay here. Thank you." And that's it. And so we continue to make our referrals, and we continue to check in on the person just to say hi and make sure that they're okay.
I appreciate you going down those roads of options as well. So thank you. That's an excellent response.
Great, thank you. Renee?
Find my cursor to unmute myself. Here we go. The Museum of Tolerance, it sounds like a really fascinating type of way to learn about cultural diversity and Holocaust survivors and what they went through. But this isn't the first training that our police department goes through. I understand that our police go through a lot of different training on diversity and training like that, mental illness. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, and that's something, and I don't have the list in front of me, but on our Sheriff's Principal Policing page, there is outlines and syllabuses that show exactly what it is, but there is training that's reoccurring on implicit bias, on racial discrimination, and it really tries to dig down at making it so that our officers are unbiased in the way that they carry out their job. And it is something that, frankly, we've been doing for a long time. I mean, again, like I said, I went to the Museum of Tolerance 23 years ago. So this is not new to us. This is something that thankfully the sheriff and the sheriff's office, we've been doing it for a long time. And so this is a road that we've gone on, and we're going to continue to try to improve.
Well, that sounds wonderful. And thank you for all you do. The 10-8 program is such a great outreach to the public. And even if the viewership at that one moment in time is not there, you still have people that go back to watch the program. So great job on that as well. And thank you for all you do, as well as our police officers who are keeping Danville safe. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Renee. Karen?
Yes, it is a great program. I love the 10-8 program. I hear about it all the time from people. I wanted to ask you about the mutual aid, whether that is also involved in this crisis. It sounds like it is, that it would be if we're on the border of San Ramon, for example. Might our officers then assist for this crisis team?
So I think I understand what you're asking, but if I go off track, just correct me and I'll answer the question I think you're asking. But I think what you're asking is, are these services used throughout the Tri-Valley, right? And so the MET team, MCRT are certainly, they're countywide. These are county services that are centered on our county behavioral health services. And then the San Ramon first responder team is for, and this is probably better with Chief Meyer presenting on it, but it is district wide. And so it is a plan that is, he is planning on rolling out district wide, which San Ramon is participating in. We will be training and participating in it as it rolls out. But certainly the MET team and MCRT that I described earlier are countywide programs.
So our office, well, not necessarily our officers, it might be the health person that's on that team might be called to help some other issues that we haven't faced. So that might be a benefit to our community as well.
Sure. Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. And on that, what's the response time now for the MET team? Because that was a concern before.
So here, and I think here's the thing: the MET team is not. When we look at the three phases of how a crisis occurs, right? You have pre-crisis, crisis, post-crisis. They're not responding to the crisis. When a patient is in distress and maybe they're doing self-harm actively, or maybe family members are holding them down, that's not when MET team responds. That's when your police officers respond to control the scene. MET team, think of them more as case management. Right. And so they get involved right away, but it's not necessary for them to have a shortened response time, because they're doing more on the case management, referral, and the coordination to make sure that, okay, if we had to go out, or we suspect that we may have to go out, that we don't have to go out again and again and again, but that this case management team, this MET team, will provide that service that hopefully diverts calls from our 911 and from our officers having to respond.
That's great. That's a very good analogy to explain that.
What about MCRT, Alan?
So MCRT, and Joe, I apologize. I don't have this number, because I know that they're trying to enhance the program and put it into 3 different regions, and that may change, but they do have different response types. So depending on what you're asking for as the patient or the family member, the response may actually be a phone call, and it may be directing you to services that way. It may be an in-person visit simply with clinicians, and it could be a response where clinicians respond with law enforcement, but law enforcement is there simply to secure the scene, to make sure that it's safe for the clinician to engage and have that conversation. So depending on what type of response they're doing, will change what the actual response time is.
Great. Thank you for that. Dave?
Yeah. Chief, thank you. Great presentation. And more importantly, really appreciate you stepping up and really being proactive on addressing this whole mental illness issue. And so we know there's a number of initiatives out there, and everyone's trying to attack and come up with the right resolution or solution. And who knows how long that will take. But mental illness doesn't wait until we have a solution to begin. It's all around us today. And for you and your team to step up and say, we need to be proactive. We need to address an issue that we have in our community today and come up with an opportunity for our patients, for our consumers to not only get help, but be able to hopefully, work through their issues on a personal level. I really do appreciate that, because again, we have a condition that's amongst us today, and we really need that help. And you also not working in a bubble, but really leveraging off of some of the best practices and some of the best partners out there to come up with your program. I really do appreciate that, because it says that we are much more than just a town in a bubble. We are a town that really does want to take advantage of what works and really, introduce that and adopt that as part of our solution to support our community. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And just to make sure that I'm really clear, these aren't necessarily these aren't Danville programs. These are
Right.
programs that are provided by the county and different agencies throughout the county. And in one case, San Ramon Valley Fire Protection District. And I think you're right, Councilmember Fong, in that what we're doing is we're trying to leverage and build those relationships where we provide through them the best service we can for the residents here. And the idea being that, if I'm a carpenter building a house, I cannot just show up with a screwdriver, right? I need a lot of tools in my belt to build that house, because depending on what we're doing and what patient we may be dealing with, we don't know which solution may work. And so we need a lot of solutions. We've had longstanding relationship with Discovery Counseling Center. And so the more of those tools we can put in the bag, I think the better success we're going to see.
Yeah, I think the better term is you learn to bundle a lot of these practices out there to support what we need to do. So I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Chief, thank you again. And thanks. I know many of our retailers in downtown appreciate the sort of high profile presence you've made over the past few weeks here in the shopping season, in light of the variety of events happening, not only in Danville, but particularly elsewhere. So well done to you and the team. And please pass on our happy, there you go.
It's a lock it or lose it. I don't leave anywhere without this thing.
Yeah.
If you don't lock it or hide it, you're going to lose it.
And happy holidays to all of your crew as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, this will take us to a next item on the agenda. This is 8.1. This is a public hearing, and we will have public comment on this item as well as the next. And this is to consider adoption of ordinance number 2105. It's an urgency ordinance temporarily suspending outdoor seating limitations for restaurant uses within the town of Danville, authorizing extension of temporary land use permits and extending street closures with a waiver of Danville ordinance number 96-10. And the reason that this is on the council asked to have this put on here because our parklets outdoor temporary spaces were going to expire on January 3rd. And this is a public hearing to consider if we leave that in place or to extend that. And we'll have Dave, you want to start us off on this?
Yes, sure. Thank you. And good evening, Mayor Unrich and council members. You're all very familiar with the background on this, so I won't go into a lot of detail. We did begin this back in May of 2020 when the county health orders changed and allowed restaurants to begin serving, but outdoors only and at social distance. And so the idea was that we allowed for restaurants to have 100% of the seating they had previously, combination indoors and outdoors, but put them outdoors and put them, separated them enough for social distancing. We extended those temporary permits on 2 occasions throughout 2020 and into 2021. They were set to end in August of this year. And previous to that, the health orders had lifted again, and now restaurants are allowed to have 100% of their seating back indoors. And so at that time, we needed to actually pass an ordinance that would temporarily amend our downtown zoning ordinance, because A lot of restaurants didn't just have 100% of the pre-COVID seating, they had much more than that. And so under our ordinance, that would be subject to off-site parking and lieu fees. And so basically what the ordinance did was suspend our enforcement of the parking fees. It allowed staff to go ahead and extend the temporary land use permits for another about 6 months. As you said, they expire again here on January 3rd. Council, as we're approaching January 3rd, council asked staff to go ahead and re-agendize this for discussion of further extending the emergency ordinance. You'll notice that on pages 2 and 3 of the ordinance, there's a couple of blank spots there. So we haven't made a recommendation for how long you should extend them if you do decide to extend them. So we'll take direction from the council and we'll fill in those blanks if that's the direction that you want to go. So I think at this point, we'll just make ourselves available for questions. I see Jill Bergman, our Economic Development Director, is also here to help answer questions, as well as Rob and Joe. So happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Got you on mute, Newell. I can't hear you if you're calling on somebody.
Boy, was that a rookie. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I just was saying thank you, Dave, to you, Jill, the whole team here, and Rob to help us pivot over this past 19 months in trying to help our local businesses. And I'm going to open it for questions. I just want to remind council members, because we do have people who are going to speak tonight, please, let's respect our public hearing process. Only questions for this period and no comments. Don't, let's leave our comments till that's our time to chat. So we'll start with Renee Morgan. Renee.
Thank you, Mayor Arnrich. I did have a few questions, and this has given us the opportunity to kind of go back through after 19 months and kind of clarify a few areas that I had some questions on. With the current parklets that we have, I know some have pulled their ability to have a parklet. They chose not to. And some have kept them. Are we at full capacity right now? Are they at seating capacity with the restaurants currently, with their outdoor seating as well? Would they be able to meet full capacity if they were at 100% shut down?
You're referring to the ones that have pulled their parklets out?
No, the ones that still have their parklets. Are they at full capacity? And have we had anybody else come back to ask for a parklet?
So the restaurants that still have the outdoor parklets, since the county and the state is allowing for 100% occupancy of the restaurants, I don't think anybody's gone out there to do any counts, but I would assume that they have not only the 100% they had before COVID, but they have the extended seating capacity with the parklets. So they're probably well over their pre-COVID parking maximum numbers that were allowed at that time. We've had a few requests here recently, and we're still considering those up until January 3rd, because we've said that even though if you didn't come forward before, you still have the right to do that. And so we're actually getting a couple that are interested in permanent enclosures to kind of get ahead of if and when this does end. And we've had a couple more temporary requests in the last month or so, temporary LEPs.
So I'm assuming that the 25% gross interior area, that's been taken out of this ordinance because we can exceed that now. So that's something that we can remove from this, because I know that it's been in the past, and it even stated in here in on page 2, it says outdoor seating which exceeds 25% of the gross interior area of the restaurant is subject to a fee. And that right there under the current ordinance is not in effect, correct?
That is not in effect. And basically what it says is you can have 25% match of your indoor gross square footage outdoor seating area with no parking requirement. There's nothing that says you can't do more than 25%. So really the thing is that they're able to do more than 25% because it's not costing them any money to pay for the offsite parking lieu fees. But there's not a 25% limit.
So that's been waived by this emergency ordinance only because there's an emergency order in the state that allows us to make that.
Correct. And that was originally in the parklet, and then we removed it because it stated that. I just wanted to make it clear that it's not in that, in the evaluation here, it states under the current ordinance. So we want to make sure because of the emergency, it's not in there. Correct?
Yes, under the current ordinance, the 25% would be max unless they're really willing to pony up a lot of money for additional offsite parking and loop fees. So basically, but they could have done more than 25% at any time if they're willing to pay the fees. So really, the way to look at it is that they're able to do more than 25% without the fees here temporarily.
And then our current sign ordinance applies to the parklets, which prohibits most of, if not all, exterior signage. Is that correct?
Yeah, our sign ordinance is still in effect. So is you may recall a couple years ago, we made outdoor seating a use by right. So we took away the requirement for a land use permit. We built in development standards into our ordinance that talked about things like no additional signage. Umbrellas aren't supposed to have, signage that try to draw attention and that type of thing. So yes, those are still enforceable.
So, but I don't see that in here. And I was wondering if we could call it out because I wanted to make it really clear to these business owners that we stay within the guidelines of Danville's ordinances and our guidelines. I understand the variant and the extensions and all these things, but I don't see that in here. I was hoping that we could take a look at that. And also, one of the things that I wanted to take a look at as well is the aesthetics of the exterior of these. And that's something that we can bring back at the end of the conversation when we go back to discussion. But I definitely wanted to make sure that we were addressing the music issue that I believe has been taken care of, as well as making sure that, the standards of Danville, meaning the cleanliness of the restaurants, the sidewalks, the steps, the exterior areas, the tents that are up, that type of thing, that they are also addressed in this as we extend it, because it's a partnership with the restaurants and the businesses. So I'd like to see us do that. Is that something we can do at the very end as well?
Sure. Regarding the signage, we can certainly lift the language we have kind of buried in our ordinance and put it into the conditions of approval, because with your authorization, we will reissue these permits with conditions of approval for whatever period of time. So we can certainly do that. The exterior music was a problem, amplified music was a problem a number of occasions, and we did revoke at least one outdoor use permit because of that, but I believe right now everybody's in good standing and we haven't had any complaints about that in some time. And the discussion about aesthetics, certainly we've had that before, and glad to hear any thoughts you have on it.
Great, I appreciate that.
Just a clarification on that, Dave. So in our ordinance and in the past, there is no aesthetic standards for the parklet spaces at this point in time, correct?
No, what we're relying on is that when applicants first applied, we got, we had some, at least sketches of what they want to do outside, and we tried to, assure that they built them that way. I think that some of them haven't been maintained the way they were built, and certainly some of them, we do have conditions that talk about keeping the flaps up when the outdoor, when the parklet's not in use, and other things that aren't, that would help the aesthetics that probably aren't being enforced as strongly as they could be.
I think if I might just add on to what Dave is saying, when we go back to when this started and this accommodation was first made and the amount of time that it took the town to get there, which was a very short period of time, I don't think that anyone was operating under the impression that they were going to continue to remain in place for as long as they have. So, I think that if there are concerns with respect to some of the issues, product placement, signage, those types of things that are covered actually per what the chief of planning is saying under our current ordinance, if we need to do a better job of adhering to those standards, if we're going to be reissuing temporary LUPs for an additional period of time, then we should make that clear.
Great, thank you. Renee, thank you for your questions. Karen?
Okay, thank you. I just had a couple of questions before we have everybody go around here. I appreciate the questions that have already come up. The first one is, do we have any way we're looking at the indoor versus outdoor? We've been talking about the 25% rule, which can be exceeded, but are people using the indoor versus the outdoor? And because this is some of the feedback that we've gotten before, because based upon the weather right now, you would think that everybody would be indoor, but that's not what I'm hearing happens. So are we measuring that in any way, or is Joe Bergman working through that with people?
Yeah, we don't have a measurement tool in place, but we do hear from some of our restaurant owners that there still is a little bit of a hesitancy to dine indoors versus out. Not as much with the colder weather. They're starting to see a little bit more indoors, but it's not back to 100% normal.
Okay, thank you. Because yeah, when you say a hesitancy, we can't actually measure those that decided that they're not even coming right now because of the weather. It's kind of like airplanes. The second question has to do with the date. That's the one that we're going to, I guess, talk about on page 3. If we do extend these, then we would look at the section through that has C that talks about a certain date. So I needed to ask Rob Ewing, what are the possibilities? Because last time it just kind of got thrown out there as a certain solid number of months and nothing was tied to it. I think what we're facing here, I'm asking you, can we tie it to when the state makes changes in some way? Because I think that's really what's driving what we're seeing right now, is the state came out with major changes of what restaurants could do. Throwing them for kind of into a different world again. And, or could it be that we want to look at a date that measures what the weather is? And we don't know that. We don't even know that today, how heavy the rain's going to be tonight, but we certainly don't know months ahead whether or not we're going to have a warm or cold spell that's going to affect this a lot in terms of people having the finances. So I wanted to ask, can you tie it to something besides a date certain? And if so, how we can define that date certain? Could it be involving with state rules, weather, or other rules that we could look at? Rob?
Yeah, I mean, in theory, you could tie it to something other than a date certain. The difficulty would be what criteria or metric you want to use. So for instance, there's certain things that are tied to whenever the state may lift the statewide declaration of emergency.
Mm-hmm.
But that could go on for quite some time, different than what the State Department of Public Health may issue in terms of restaurants. You also have the issue that the counties have the ability to do things differently. So for instance, Contra Costa, there's the requirement to show proof of vaccination to dine indoors, which is not a statewide issue. There's stuff at the state through ABC, Alcoholic Beverage Control, that currently allows restaurants and bars to serve out in these parklet areas when they otherwise couldn't. So there's plenty of things you could tie it to. I would speculate though it'd be difficult to figure out which of those might be of most impact to the local restaurants. I think I know Jill's done some research on what other surrounding cities are doing in terms of how long they're extending these, and it's kind of all over the map. While I think we could do what you're talking about, I think picking a date certain, which would trigger another round of review, is probably the most straightforward way to go.
And then the question 3 related to what you just said, the review. So we didn't really build that in here. We just had a date certain. So could we set something in here before, not only a date that we set, but some date that was at least 2 or 3 months before then that we're going to review? Could we do that?
Absolutely. I wouldn't necessarily put that in the ordinance itself, but you could certainly make that part of a motion, that if you're going to extend it for X months, that Y month, you want to have this brought back to a study session, for instance, to see what's happening.
A study session. Okay. Thank you very much, Rob. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Karen. Robert and then Dave.
Great, thank you. So Dave, I want to preface it by saying I think most of the parklets and most of the business owners have done a really nice job of sort of keeping up and keeping their places clean and trying to follow the rules. And sort of along Renee's line of questioning, I see on page 3 where, we've addressed the outdoor music. We've addressed the garbage bins. I mean, these are all things that we've had complaints before on. And then number 3 is the town shall have authority to remove or alter parklets at the business owner's expense. And then I see number 4 is failure to comply with these conditions may result in immediate revocation of the temporary land use permit. What I don't see in here is some of the complaints that we've gotten, like for instance, cleanliness and food debris in the parklets, the signage, the advertising, and I'm calling it trash/food. We've even had some complaints where tarps are flapping, and look, the ones that are doing a great job, this ordinance has nothing to do with them. The ones that aren't, I think we need to put some language in here that covers sort of where, we have an incident where we're having some issues. Those are the ones that I think need to be in here. And I know on page 3, between 1 through 4, I think it should be a 5th one in there where we just maybe blanket it and say code enforcement, or should we include something like code enforcement needs to make contact and issue a warning, or at least make contact and say, hey, these are the repairs that need to be made before we just take the parklet away.
So that, just to interrupt you. So your question, Robert, is can we add some of these other standards into this in a way that is enforceable?
Please. Yes.
Sorry, David.
Yes, and like I said, I think we have a lot of that stuff in there. I think it's just a matter of, we've been trying to help the businesses out. We haven't been heavy-handed. We haven't been going out and really enforcing things unless we get complaints about them. So, if you see things such as, some of these tents that aren't being maintained or flapping in the wind, or, are kind of half dismantled and kind of laying in the street, or, generally, I guess you could use language such as not being maintained as approved, that we could go through the process we've been going through. It does involve our code enforcement officer, but it involves staff to go out and make contact and, initiate a process where we talk with them, and they can get to a point where we could revoke the land use permit if we don't get compliance. The cleanliness side of it, that's a little bit harder to, determine. It's almost more of a health department type of issue where they deal with the cleanliness of restaurants and that type of thing. So I'm not sure. We could have some general language in there, but I don't think that we have anybody on staff that's qualified to go out and determine what is sanitary and what's not, as far as the way the restaurant outdoor seating is being maintained.
Yeah. If I could add on to what Dave just said. If I could add on to what Dave just said, part of the problem with the cleanliness issue, again, it's more, that's sort of what health department does on indoors. We don't inspect for cleanliness and health conditions indoors. Outdoors is a problem. The other thing to remember is that maybe not so much in the winter, but certainly in warmer months, the majority of the use of these areas is occurring when a staff's gone. I mean, code enforcement isn't here, planning isn't here, we're not here. So, first of all, we haven't got a lot of complaints about cleanliness, but if we do, we'd probably get them, Monday morning. And it's a little tougher to deal with at that point. So that's the enforcement part is a little more problematic because of that.
So Dave, let me just turn this question around then. In your opinion, do you believe this is strong enough to sort of satisfy any issues that may come up? We can deal with it through this ordinance? Because I don't want to make this more difficult for the business owners. I just want to make sure that when we have a bad player, we have some language in place to deal with it.
I mean, I think we hear what you're saying, and I think it probably, if this ordinance goes forward and we have these conditions of approval, we can kind of reemphasize these conditions of approval, raise them to the top and underline them, and really make sure that, we call out these are new or points of emphasis, conditions of approval that we were going to really be watching for in the coming months.
Okay.
Just to keep in mind, the public hearing process itself, there's only 3 or 4 of these businesses. The rest are doing an outstanding job. So
Agreed.
I think what Dave just suggested is a good fix of that. Let's go to Dave and then back to Renee. Dave?
Yeah, questions that I have. Jill, what date can we count on for our consultant to come back with a hard and solid draft of his analysis and his recommendation on the downtown?
So the way the timeline is set, that's late spring, early summer for that. I don't have a pinpointed date that I can tell you at this moment, but it's expected more probably right before summer.
May or June.
Mm-hmm.
Around that time.
If I can, Councilmember Fong, if I can just clarify something, because I brought this up at the hearing that the council had back in July or August when you extended these parklets out to January the 3rd. Please bear in mind that the downtown master plan is going to look at how we can further activate and improve all of the public outdoor spaces downtown. And so from that standpoint, I just want to highlight that although on the part of some, there may be a little bit of a misimpression, there is no direct link between extending all of these individual parklets and the completion of the downtown master plan. So I don't want to create an impression, and I'm not suggesting that your question did that, sir, but it was just an opportunity for me to insert this. I don't want to create the impression that once we have a downtown master plan, that it will somehow make permanent or legitimize all of the temporary outdoor seating that currently exists right now, because I think that would be, I don't think that that's something that's likely to happen. So I just want to be careful about linking the two.
No, Joe, I absolutely agree, and I appreciate you clarifying that comment so that there is no false expectation. Where I was going with this was the fact that whatever we decide to do as a town, our businesses are going to have to evolve to whatever that plan is that we subscribe to. It won't be revolutionary, it'll be evolutionary. So any investments by the town would, the earlier we know, the more predictable we are. Wouldn't you agree that then I think we could all be aligned, both town and business, to move and evolve to eventually where we would like the town to be and where we would like the businesses to be?
Well, I think that, so if that's the question is, the downtown master plan is something that we've been planning to do anyway. We're accelerating that. It has a whole host of variety of things. They'll look for opportunities for public, private space, shared, possible rentals and things like that. But it has nothing, absolutely nothing to do with the ordinance that's before us today. They're not linked.
I understand that.
So
I understand that.
Question. So this is only question time, Dave. This is important. What's the question, or do you have a question specific to what the ordinance is doing or changing?
You just answered it, which was, does this ordinance address the plan, the updated plan, and the opportunity to evolve to meet the plan's objectives?
No link. Yeah.
Okay.
No link. It's a standalone emergency temporary space.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Renee, did you still have a question?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say, Dave pretty much addressed it right after Robert spoke. So I'm anxious to hear what the public has to say and bring it back. So
Yes.
thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So thank you for that, Dave. Thank you and Jill for helping us out on those clarifications. So at this time, we're going to open the public hearing, and this is an opportunity for anybody in the public to speak on this item. And we'll have up to 3 minutes each. And we will note that we received 2 letters from these. Judy Lloyd, who I see her looking in, but she was not feeling well, but we did receive the letter on behalf of the Chamber of Void. She is going to speak. And we also received one from Pat Burgess. So we'll just note that for the record. And at this time, we will start and we will call on, Maria, if you can call on Doug Offenhartz first.
Yes. And I will share my screen for the timer.
Okay.
Welcome,
mean-
Doug. Nice to see you.
Well, greetings from Bangkok, Thailand. One advantage of these Zoom meetings is that I'm able to join you from far away. And most of the discussion that's occurred so far has answered the questions that I had, which was the link between the downtown master plan and these temporary permits. And the major concern that I have, which Renee addressed, were the aesthetics of these outdoor seating areas. And I'm hopeful that the downtown master plan will address design criteria for these parklets. And so I hope that there is, I mean, I heard Joe and others say very firmly that there's no direct link between the two, but I'm hoping that these parklets won't be extended on a continuing basis, because it looks like COVID may be here forever. That there will be a design focus on any of these parklets continuing into the future, because even though I haven't seen them in the past several months, from my perspective, they look pretty ratty and not in keeping with everything Danville has done for the last almost 40 years toward trying to develop a very high design standard in town. And that concludes my remarks.
Great. Doug, thank you. And if it's okay, I'm just going to share with folks, because we know you, but not everybody listening. Doug Offenhartz owns the building where Bliss, Christy James, and the new CBD store is. And thank you for sharing your comments. It's always good to hear from you, and we really appreciate that. This will take us now to, we'll call on Judy Lloyd. Marie, if you could let Judy in. Welcome, Judy.
Well, good evening. How are all of you tonight? I hope you're doing well. I am Judy Lloyd. I am the president and CEO of the Danville Area Chamber of Commerce. Very proud to have that role. And I want to thank you, Mayor Arnerich, and our new Vice Mayor Storr and council members for your leadership during this time of pandemic change and uncertainty. We know you don't make the state and county health rules. We also know that as a community, we've done our level best as the voice of Danville businesses to help spread the word on the importance of vaccination adherence, as well as compliance with health rules in the communities we serve. But still, we find ourselves now with even more uncertainty and frustration. Tonight, Americans across the country are watching 2 NFL football games on a Tuesday night, rescheduled because more than 50 NFL football players tested positive for COVID-19. And while I cheer on my beloved Washington football team, it strikes me that communities like Danville, as well as national TV audiences, are struggling to make sense of it all some 21 months later. The Chamber's letter to you today clearly stated our position. We would like to see an extension of the temporary outdoor land use permits to give businesses predictability and consumers a choice. We look forward to working with you and our outstanding town staff on the items we've addressed in our letter: safety, conformity, noise, cleanliness, beautification, and other aspects that demonstrate the care and respect we have for our businesses, our community, and our beautiful historic downtown. We don't know what the new health orders are going to look like, what additional mandates may appear in coming weeks and months. But what we do know today is the Omicron variant accounts for 73% of the new COVID-19 cases. To maximize the ability for our businesses not just to survive, but to thrive, we're asking that you adopt the ordinance 2021-05, the urgency ordinance authorizing the extension of temporary land use permits and the extension of street closures. We have seen the uptick as well as the across the board community support for keeping these options open for customers. And I just want to kind of end by saying something I've said before. Somebody very famous, John Kinsella, once said, if you build it, they will come. And I've said before, who would have thought a pandemic would provide the opportunity to get more residents and customers downtown? You provided this opportunity. It's worked out well for our community to gather at the time when we most needed it. We stand ready to work with you, the staff, and your team to continue the good work throughout the pandemic into 2022. God bless all of you and happy holidays.
Judy, thank you so much. I can hear it in your voice. You have a lovely voice. I know you're not feeling well. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. And thank you for the letter as well. And I hope you feel much better. And now we'll go next to Glenn Bittner. Glenn, welcome.
Thank you, council members, for allowing me to speak. Judy was talking about the 2 NFL games on. It's definitely something I was going to bring up. I also had just noticed that the NHL has suspended all games for a week. And with the NFL issue, those players about 90% vaccinated, and there was over 70 of them that got coronavirus in 2 days. So unfortunately, it seems like we might not be out of this at that point. Another point that I came across recently was restaurants are the #1 driver of sales tax revenue in all of California. They're a cornerstone business of every community. And so when I'm out talking to the public, it seems like a lot of retail businesses, it's almost 90%, obviously not a scientific number, but almost 90% of people I talk to are for the part that's continuing indefinitely. So I know this conversation is about extending this order, not the master plan, but it seems to me that we really need to extend these at least through whatever time frame. Just like people have been saying, we don't know when this pandemic is going to end and stop causing issues for our businesses. Really the other thing.
Point of order, Noel, I'm hearing some huge background something going on.
I can actually hear him very well. So
I'm hearing like there's a carnival going on in the back.
Oh,
there is background noise, but I can hear his voice.
If that's me, then I'll stop. But I'm sorry.
But Glenn, thank you. Your point is, I'll just summarize. You would like to make the point that the customer base is saying that they really like to see these continue. You are asking the council to extend this as long as possible. Your ultimate goal would be hopeful that these would be indefinite, and that restaurants are driving sales tax growth in the state of California. So Glenn, I just want to thank you, and I know you were working, and for some of us, we can hear you well, but we do thank you so much for that. Let's go to next is Darren Matt. Darren, welcome.
Thank you. Find that unmute button. Actually, first, I'd like to echo the mayor's comments on the appreciation for the added police presence and all the efforts of Chief Shields and his team to keep our community safe. We love seeing those parked cars downtown. Now to my comments. Dear Honorable Mayor and council members, I'd like to thank the town council and town staff for your ongoing attention to these important efforts. The last time this topic was discussed at a town council meeting was June 15th. Ironically, the same date that California officially reopened and claimed COVID was behind us. At the time, we were all under the impression that the worst of COVID was finished. Then the Delta variant dominated headlines over the summer, led to Contra Costa County health officials to impose the strictest indoor dining restrictions in the state. And now Omicron poses an even larger threat of another winter surge. Unfortunately, we're in a worse position today than we were on June 15th. On November 9th, I forwarded a letter of support for extending this January 3rd deadline that represented the collective desire of 15 restaurants that signed the letter. The 15 restaurants, along with 2 who have since signed on, represents almost unanimous support of those who have utilized these expanded areas. The simple fact is these expanded patios have greatly benefited the majority of restaurants and retailers in Danville. They've encouraged Danville residents to stay local while also attracting new people to our community. A few years ago, the town adopted the mantra, live locally, to encourage residents to support our local businesses and create a more vibrant community. Based on my firsthand experience over the past 5 years, These expanded patios have advanced that effort more than any marketing campaign ever could. As we enter another period of anxiousness and uncertainty, I ask the council to continue the ordinance for expanded patios indefinitely until we are truly beyond the effects of COVID. It will keep our residents safe and give our businesses a better chance to survive and ultimately thrive. Thank you for your consideration.
Aaron, thank you so much for that. We really appreciate it. Happy holidays, and thank you for the comments about our policing as well. Our next speaker is Brittany Doyle Riley. Brittany, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Arnerich. I'm also sitting here with Terry Doyle. We'll keep our comments brief. We just wanted to speak up on behalf of ourselves as attorneys working here on Hearts, also property owners here on Hearts, and not one of the restaurants. We just wanted to say that we wholeheartedly support all of our restaurants here. We support the parklets. We can say personally, it's been great for our business to have more foot traffic downtown. We absolutely love seeing that, and it really truly has helped us bring in new clients and made our business more vibrant during this difficult time. So we'll leave it at that. The chamber really represented our position well. So thank you to the chamber for ongoing efforts, and thank you to all of you for supporting us during this time.
Great. Brittany, thank you so much for your comments. Happy holidays to you and the Doyle family and Riley family. Next, this will take us to Kiva Dodd. Kiva, welcome.
Yes, good morning or good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for all your support of the downtown and the parklets. I just wanted to echo some of the things that have been said here. As a retailer that sees customers every day, I can say there are very, very few people who do not like the parklets. Everybody raves about how the town has come to life, that they hope they stay forever. We don't get any complaints about the aesthetics because everybody knows that they were put up temporary, as we did not know what the playbook would be for the pandemic. And I think that if they are supported to be more long-term, that the restaurants will spend the money to make them look better, because they'll know that they won't have to take them down anytime soon. I think that, you know, if you want to take it for 6 more months or 3 more months and review it as we start with a master plan, that's a great idea. But I would urge you to really keep these parklets in place, because they are a vital part of our community, and our community, in my opinion, enjoys using them. Thank you for your time.
Great. Kiva, thank you so much for your comments. We wish you a very successful holiday season as well at your wonderful store. Okay, Tim Argente, welcome.
Welcome, Mayor and members of the Town Council. My name is Tim Argente. I'm a longtime Danville resident and also a member of the Board of Directors of the Danville Area Chamber of Commerce. The perspective I wanted to briefly talk to you about tonight is that I've had the opportunity to walk the sidewalks in the downtown area and talking to businesses about the parklets, particularly searching out those businesses that are non-restaurant, and to ask their opinion about and their feelings about the parklets. And unanimously, nobody had any problems with the parklets at all. You know, one business, for a short period of time, had to ask a parklet to be moved a little bit away from in front of her business, but that was taken care of. They think it is good for the downtown. It attracts people. So it's nice to hear from those non-restaurant businesses because their voice has to be heard as well. So in closing, I'm totally in support of extending the temporary ordinance to allow for continued use of the outdoor parklets. And things are changing overnight. Every time I look at the news, there's some new information on this virus. So I don't know how flexible you can be moving into the next year, but I certainly wouldn't limit it. I'd leave it as open-ended as possible because of the unknown out there. So thank you for your time.
Tim, thank you so much. Thanks for all your service to the community as well. And next, Uday Kumar. Uday, our delightful, sweet retailer. How are you? Welcome.
Thank you. I'm just going to be brief. Mayor Unrich and all the council members, really thank you for what you've done through this period. We really love the support. I just want to talk on behalf of the other restaurants. I mean, being a small-time operator there, I just understand the pain that they go through. Putting that up itself it's something very unique. And I've been to other downtowns. You don't see that kind of life that we see here in Danville. I know it's temporary, but from a personal experience itself, I prefer, when I go to a restaurant today, I prefer sitting outdoors if I can, just to keep my family safe. My daughter was not vaccinated and all that. She just got vaccinated. So it just, from a personal level, it just makes you feel more safe just sitting outside for the time being, at least. I mean, when you have young kids. So, if you can do anything to just extend this, I know it may be temporary, but it just provides the small businesses a whole lot, because there is so much that we do on the back end that nobody sees, but it is tough. For whatever reason, it is, there is labor, there is supply chain, there is a lot of things that the small business owners go through, and this just adds to one more on it, right? So if you can be flexible on that, I would request that we just extend and play it according to how this virus plays, because it's just changing on a daily basis. So again, happy holidays to everyone, and thank you.
Uday, same to you. Thank you so much for your comments. And it looks like our last speaker is Dave Homer. Dave, welcome.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
I appreciate you listening to the input from everyone around. The one point I just want to bring up, which I totally agree with Councilmember Stepper, is the whole idea of visiting the need for this on an ongoing basis. So instead of setting a drop dead date for whether it's 4 months, 6 months, 8 months, a year, whatever it is, I think it is completely reasonable to say, hey, if it's a date for 5 months from today, then 3 months from today at one of the meetings, we can have the same type of conversation to visit the necessity and whether or not things are recovered. I can just tell you that right now, to echo what Darren was saying about going back to June, we thought COVID was over. Now we know it's not. And now we're facing Omicron and the uncertainty of that. And I don't want to make the blanket statement that this is going to be an ongoing problem for the next year. I would point out that we don't know what's going to happen. So let's look at what can be done to help us in the short term. And if it's not needed beyond a certain amount of time, then we can go ahead and change things without having to prolong it. But taking the opportunity to assess things after a 3-month period or 2-month period, knowing that we still have a 2-month cushion to adjust from that point on before things change back or to something new, then we have that opportunity then. So I just appreciate all of you being willing to consider the needs of not just restaurants, but all retail and the needs of the citizens of the town, and just trying to find something that helps the most people in the most ways while things are still chaotic and turbulent. So thank you very much.
Dave, thank you so much for your comments, and happy holidays to you and your family as well. Okay, that was our last speaker. I see this is the last chance. Anybody else there would like to raise their hand to speak under public comments? Seeing none, we will close public comments. We'll bring it back to the council, and we'll go back to Dave. I don't think, in looking at from Doug, Judy, Glenn, Darren, Brittany, Kiva, Tim, Uday, Dave, I don't see anything that we need to address. They were all making comments, but I don't think there was any questions. Did you see anything you need to answer, Dave?
No, I think that they were all kind of giving the same message and
No,
just, supporting the extensions.
Okay, we'll go Karen, Robert, Renee, and then Dave.
All right, so my question is still on the table essentially. Is there a way, having heard all these 8 people or 9, I didn't count, sorry, almost unanimously, and perhaps I were unanimous about wanting to see it extended indefinitely until we had a reason to stop. Is there a way, instead of a date certain, and I think Rob Ewing was talking about that, so I'm asking him the question again, is there a way to extend it longer and still have every 3 months put it on the calendar? It's still less than how often we have to vote whether we have Zoom meetings. So that we can look at any issues that come up. If it, we could leave that to Joe and Joe to determine whether it needed to come back up that soon. But at least give these, what I heard. So can we do that? Can we make it longer, have more frequent reviews, and at least guarantee a long enough time to give them, I think was the comment that was made, the probability of them being open long enough to make changes for these businesses, and still have the reviews come more often, so that you do have consumer choice and you do have some kind of certainty that is not so short that nobody wants to invest more money in these. And I'm not sure what that is. Some of you are more in retailer than other, and Jill probably has a good idea on that as well. How long would it take? Would it take a 6 month, a 9 month, a 1 year? A lot of them were saying indefinitely, because I agree. I think we're going to be in this for a long, long, long time. So what is the maximum we could do? I'm not saying we want to do the maximum, but what could we do?
Sure. So I think the one thing you don't want to do is make it indefinite. And the reason is that we are, number one, we're doing this as an urgency ordinance, but more importantly, we are saying that we're exempt from CEQA because this is just a temporary thing.
Okay.
So to make it indefinite is really sort of legally, in terms of CEQA review, et cetera, is sort of making it permanent. So I would not do that. I think whatever period of time you collectively think is appropriate, you can do. And then I think your suggestion previously that you build into the motion that, you will check back, staff will bring it back for you to check in a specified period of time before whatever the expiration. So if you made it 6 months and you want us to check in at 3, or if you want to make it 12 months and check in every 3 or 6, whatever, that's up to you. But the only thing I wouldn't do is, again, for the reason that we're avoiding CEQA here, I would not make it indefinite.
That's a good point.
Okay, so that's very clear. Thank you, Rob. And so when other people speak, I'd like them to speak a little bit more about how long should it be to at least encourage some improvements that people are saying. They don't hear complaints about the parklets, but everyone is saying they are not the beautiful Danville look yet. So, okay.
Thank you, Karen. Okay, Dave.
So thank you.
I just wanted to add on one thing to what Rob said, and that is that, the main provision of this ordinance is waiving the offsite parking lieu fees.
Okay.
So, if you do this in an indefinite timeframe, then that raises that whole question of fairness and, when and if we start charging fees.
One thing for the council as we go around the table here to think about, what we did last time, and again, as we heard from all the speakers, who knew that we'd be here again, but we did do a 6-month extension. And it's only because of the calendar, the time of year, that we're doing this sort of as the rush, because we don't have that. We didn't have 2 legislative meetings during this month, so that put a little pressure on us. But with Karen's idea, you could do a 6-month extension, and 60 days before that extension, review it. And who knows where we're at. You could either leave it in place, let it sunset, or make any new decision. But nobody has to spend any money, nor did over the past 6 months have to spend anything by our actions. So something, remember what we've done and did it work in the past. So let's go to sorry, it was Robert, then Renee, and then Dave.
Yep. Great. Thank you, Mayor. You know, one of the things I think we all need to agree on is that these parklets have been extremely successful. There's really kind of nice to be able to sit outdoors and eat. I certainly enjoy it. There's a cool factor to them. And I think that, you know, we're all looking at figuring out some way to try to extend this. And, you know, our business community has been really thoughtful in, you know, helping us understand how important these parklets are. You know, and I'm somewhere between where Karen's at on this thing here, where we take this thing out 6 months at least with an automatic 6 months extension through a review process. At least then we'd have an opportunity to sit down and discuss this one more time. You know, and I think for the most part, we haven't had any problem with the parklets. I mean, it's been well received by our businesses. It's, as you heard from Kiva or one of our retailers, the extra people downtown has helped their businesses as well. The parklets, you know, may not, someone used the word shabby. I don't know. If there's a, you know, they're temporary and they serve the purpose that we were hoping that they would do. And that's bringing people downtown to sit outdoors during COVID. And now we got Omicron involved in this. So I had 4 thoughts on this. And one of them was to just go 6 months and create a 6-month extension. One was to do a 6 months with a review period at the end of the 6 months to decide how far we're going down this, because at some point we don't know where COVID is through all this. My third one was just take it to the end of the year. You know, we do a review in the summertime, but remember, if COVID looks like it's getting better in the summertime, and then the businesses take down these parklets, which is a great expense, and they have to go back up again, that's another great expense. And then my third one, and I know Joe's sort of talking us out of that one, but it was to mirror it up with our downtown master plan, you know, which looks like coming out in spring, summer, which would give us 6 months plus 2 months to basically understand the downtown master plan. So that would be an 8-month program. And those were my 4 thoughts on this, but I would certainly want to extend this to some degree and figure out, you know, what our comfort level is to sort of review period after the 6 months, but 6 months in my world would be minimum.
Okay, thank you. Renee?
Thank you. So, you know, this is difficult. And, you know, partly because we never thought we'd be here 19 months ago. We thought we would be all back to not wearing a mask and on the streets and, you know, eating and dining and everything else and having parties at Christmas, but it's not the way it is. You know, the variant cases are on the rise, and the survival of our businesses and the safety of our residents and their customers are of the utmost importance. You know, but Danville, we have high standards, and I think that's been mentioned a few times as well. And we need to make sure that we're maintaining those standards while we reassure our businesses that we're willing to so-called invest our time into making sure that they can have these parklets in existence. It's important for them because if we want the aesthetics of these businesses and we want the aesthetics of these parklets to look like we believe Danville standards should be, we've got to give these businesses the time to be able to invest and not make them feel like they're going away tomorrow. And that's a juggling act, because even then we feel as though we're extending something when we don't even know what's going on ourselves. So, but I do think that this is a partnership between our businesses and the town. I don't think that this is about the town of Danville going out and creating code enforcement to tell these businesses how their businesses should look or their restaurants should look. I think the restaurants should know the standards that we have. That's why they have their restaurants here. And it's difficult to say, hey, your sidewalks aren't clean. There's food particles, there's garbage around, people are complaining. We've got to have an agreement between the businesses with the parklets and the town so that we're not babysitting parklets. And I know that this is an extension, but from my standpoint, I would love to see David put something into this that states the cleanliness, the aesthetics, along with the fact that we need to be cognizant of the level of, volume of the music. I think that's really important. I don't want to get any more phone calls about
how there are dumpsters sitting in parking spaces when they belong in the enclosures. I mean, those are little things that may not seem like a big thing, but it is, because it's Danville, and those are our ordinances that are still in effect, even though we're giving them parklets. My suggestion would be that we extend it into the summer, and that we look back sometime, say for instance, April, right around April, and take a look at it again. That gives us a few months. It gives us some time to get through the possible variants that'll hit us during the new year and some of those things, and extend it until then. I don't think that extending it indefinitely is the answer, because obviously, as Dave said, it would, you know, and Rob, you know, for all the reasons that they've mentioned, I don't think that's okay. So if that be the case, I mean, I would make the motion to extend this, and to extend it to a date specific with a review in the next 4 months.
Okay, so like
I would
just
second that if we could put a date in there, Renee.
Yes.
That's
So what-
long, that gets you through the summer at least.
Yeah, so what I hear is a 6 month and a
No.
30-day rule.
No,
You-
you said that, that's what I said, but I didn't say that. I said I would like to see it longer than that, because if you're getting to summer, you want to be able to have a chance to do some work.
Sorry, Karen. Karen, I was summarizing what Renee was speaking. I was trying to summarize what she was saying. Let's go to Dave and hear your comments.
Thank you, Mayor. First, my recommendation is 1 year extension with benchmarks every 3 months. And I believe that's important because, one, we want to make sure that we have set criteria on what we're measuring to determine whether we continue to extend the date, and the 3 month benchmark provides with that. And what the criteria I have established here for consideration would be representation by the town. Right now, the chamber is saying they have 500 members, and a large percentage of what we heard today says, yes, let's extend today. I want to make sure going forward and every 3 months that we still have that level of representation and support. Two, the pandemic. We don't know where this is going or how it's going to end up. And we need to take a look at benchmarking so that we know on an ongoing basis, how are we evolving to address the pandemic? What are we doing to make sure that we are in compliance? So the pandemic is important for us to benchmark. Three, making sure that we do, I know Joe said you don't connect the update of the master plan to what we are doing with this ordinance today. But the reality is, from a return on investment, if we're going to invest any money, if the businesses are going to invest any money, let's take a look at it from a return on investment, and let's make sure that's aligned with what that plan, that updated plan will provide. And every dollar that's invested contributes toward the value of what we want in the long term for downtown Danville. We can only know, and we can only work with each other if we're routinely talking with each other between business and town. And I believe 3 months provides that opportunity to continue the conversations and the partnership that Renee commented on. And then the fourth piece is working out all these issues. I mean, we haven't talked about safety much, and yet we know that's a concern, that there may be a potential accident waiting to happen. The businesses and the restaurants are open and have stated clearly they want to work with us on addressing all of these issues. It's not a we'll figure it out and they will comply. It's, hey, how do we work this out together, because it's for the greater good. It's not for one restaurant versus one retail business. There are issues, and whether it's safety, whether it's cleanliness, whether it's whatever it is, I believe that the businesses and the restaurants are willing to work with us and to help us resolve those issues. But again, we can't be looking at it once a year or once every 6 months. It ought to be part of a routine conversation so that we can benchmark and continue to grow and develop value, so that again, in the longer term, we're proud of the town we have, and so is the community that frequents our town as well. That's
Great,
my
great,
comment.
Great, thank you. I'll add my comments and then we go back around again. First of all, I agree, we should extend this. I think we got to remember this is temporary. So, and we thought it was temporary. And what we did was, we did 6 months last time and we really thought that was going to be great. It was only going to be a couple of months and then be out of it. I think the 6 month is always good. It didn't cost, this is important, it didn't cost businesses a penny to stay open that extra 6 months outside. If they close down and reopen, absolutely. If we add other standards, for example, we didn't think we would have these very long, so we didn't do aesthetic standards. If we add them now, that's going to bury some of those businesses. It means a financial hardship. It means they'll have to close those outdoor areas. They'll have to go back through the fire department, all the materials, all those changes. So I would just say at this point, as much as I think we sent a message to those, and there are really only 3 or 4 of these restaurants that don't play at the same level of what you call, I think, Danville standards. But there are 4 restaurants as well who have told me they're only going along with this. They want these parklets to go away, but they're willing to help their competitors. Some of those have paid extraordinary, over $250,000 for off-site parking fees. And now their competitor is getting more spaces than they have and paid 0. So they carry all of that debt, all of those payments against that. So we have been able to waive all of that and all of the aesthetic standards and everything because it's temporary and we're under an emergency ordinance. So as much as we want to overcomplicate this, I would just think what we've heard from all our businesses, let's keep it to a date certain. And we meet except for December, we have 2 legislative meetings a month. We have a study session a month. As Karen suggested, and Renee and others, if you do 6 months, have a 30-day review before that, and we have a meeting, we'll go, yeah, hey, we're still in the same boat, just continue it another 6 months. That's all the action we need to take. All the other things, the health department, all those are actually in place now. Raising the level through our discussion here is important. Again, there are 3 or 4 restaurants that don't adhere to those standards. The other thing to remember, there are restaurants that are in the process right now, and not all are eligible, of getting permanent outdoor dining because they have the property, their property, to do that. The reality is, I talked to David again today, for those that have to go all the way through the process, even though we're expediting it, the land use is by right, there are rules to that. It takes 3 to 5 months to make that happen. So 6 months allows them. So anybody that wants to keep those, for example, there are those that have plenty of property who want to eliminate some of the parking, they can do that. So think about that. The 6 month is also an opportunity for them to go get the permanent solution and not keep delaying it. 2 of those that I know personally are in there getting their permits now, and they hope before June to have it permanently done. So maybe a context, just to keep it simple, extend it, do it 30 days. Karen.
Okay, so you said, because I still would like my second to stand with what Renee had proposed, but, or David or you, everyone's talking about how long it needs to be. It was too short, it's too short if we don't have the time because our staff is working very hard on a downtown master plan, not what's in the plan here, Dave, but just the fact that they're using a lot of time for that. This is what I see during this 6 months. A lot of people thought they were going to get a little more assistance from the town in deciding what they can do. And now they're further out and they can do that. But I can tell you that Jill has been amazingly tied up with downtown issues and she will continue to be. So I think 6 months, putting you right when the summer starts, when everybody wants to be outside, is too short a time to look at all those issues. But looking at them at every 3 months, especially like Dave Fung said, the COVID part is really important. So I would think you could find a longer time period. 1 month to review is not long enough. You can't say to the restaurants, oh, in 1 month now you got to get rid of these. You have to give them a little bit more time. So I've heard things that I think are what we heard from the businesses, that a longer time period with an extension and a more frequent review. So
Thank you, Karen, for that. I appreciate it. Renee didn't, she said she was willing to make a motion. She didn't technically make a motion. But Renee, you want to go?
I thought she did, and I thought I seconded
I
it.
did. But one of the things I wanted to clarify was I'm not asking to, I know this is a temporary, but what I'm asking is that we make sure, when we were talking, I was talking to Dave Crompton earlier, was to reiterate the sign ordinance, to reiterate the things that we already have, just to make sure that they're placed within this ordinance as documents so that we have something to go on. I know, Newell, you've mentioned 3 or 4 of them, here or there, not good players, but what if we have 5 or 6? What if we need something that we can take a look at as well. So the date specific, I mean, if I'm listening to everybody and I'm trying to, trying to gather the information on what everybody's saying, if we look at the ordinance on page 2, item number 13, we're looking at suspension or temporary suspension of outdoor. I think by looking at that, it shall, first of all, let's go to page 3. Let me back up. Let's go to page 3 and item C. The ordinance shall remain into effect. What if we did July 3rd, 2022? And the reason I say that's a Sunday, it's before the 4th of July, and we will have a better understanding of where we're at, hopefully, by the summer. If we did a review of this, say for instance, on April 5th, if we came back and took a review of it on April 5th, that gives us some wiggle room between now and say 4 months from now, and then also getting into the summer holidays as well. And that gives us some time. To Dave's point, I'd love to say a year from now, but like we are right now, we thought January 3rd, we'd all be out of this. There's no saying that we couldn't extend it further from there. I just think those are some great dates, to put in to this temporary outdoor seating ordinance to give us an opportunity to review and also to give us something to stand on if we needed to, and to have Dave add those areas of concern that we were talking about before, which are already part of our ordinance.
Renee, I'm looking, where is Marie? Renee, would you consider looking at, instead of the 3rd, just back it up a few days? The reason why, pick it up to June 31st. Reason why it's kind of the middle of the week. If they're really going to do it that way, all the event planners hopefully we're going to have a real 4th of July parade on 4th of July. It just might make it practical.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think you're right, because then it gives them time. If we have to remove them, it gives us time also to,
Okay. So your motion, just to summarize, and I'll go back to Karen, your motion is to go to June 30th with a date specific to end, but with a review on April 5th, and to highlight the signage, all of those other requirements, meeting health code for exterior standards, et cetera, and highlighting those in the ordinance.
Yes.
Okay, was there anything I missed on that?
Yes, because we said we'd review on study sessions, and April 5th is not a second Tuesday.
Renee didn't say that. That's why I'm clarifying. It's her motion.
Rob, do we have to do it at a study session?
No, you can review it at any meeting you want.
And because if you review it, it will be put on the agenda. And if we want to take action, then we've agendized.
Absolutely.
Study session requires to do too.
Okay. And I would rather do it that way, so that if we have people that want to have input as well, that we are making that motion based on that.
And Karen, as the seconder, are you comfortable with that?
Yeah, I'm comfortable. I wouldn't have made it that way, but I support where where you're getting consensus here.
Okay. Robert, thank you. Robert,
well, the only thing I would add is, I want to be careful with the 4th of July parade. I know people sort of ramp up for the 4th of July parade, and I don't want this to be, a hindrance. So my only thought would be to go beyond the 4th of July, so that it gives, we don't have to have people. Remember, we have people worried about this. We have people worried that we're going to take down the parkplex, and I don't really want to do that, and encumber the 4th of July parade. For me, I think going beyond it would make a little bit better sense. And then do the review after the 4th of July.
But we do know both fire department, police, and everybody were concerned if we were even last year going to hold it, because of the obstructions and all those things that go along. So
I was under the impression that the fire department, and the fire marshal actually signed off that we could
They
actually do a
did
parade with the fire trucks.
under a limited basis. So, yeah.
But we also can hear this at a different time. This is not, we can come back and hear this. And if on April we decide, we can do that
We
as
want to
well.
extend it. We can
Right.
do that. Okay,
Absolutely.
Dave, last
Yeah,
comment.
I'm just glad we're extending it. So this is really important.
Good. That's a good point to make. Dave?
Yeah, my comment is that I think I'd like to extend it through summer, because just from our previous experience, we were looking at, terminating or not extending. And then we said, well, let's give them through the Christmas holidays so they can get a little more running room. I think what may end up happening is if we have a dead date of June 30th, and then we say, well, we're going to let them, operate through July 4th because that's going to be good for business. We're going to say, well, why don't we just let them operate through the end of summer because that's prime time for the businesses. And so it's kind of like, what are we trying to achieve here? And I'm worried that, we become unpredictable to our businesses and to our restaurants as to what we're trying to achieve, so that they can't really plan well because we keep changing our mind. And I'd rather have a longer date, and I'd rather that we extend that date to the end of summer, but continue to have 3-month benchmarking so that we can, one, measure where we are, and two, make sure that we and the businesses are building up versus trying to deal with what's not working.
Thank you, Dave. I support the motion the way it's made, and here's why. Keep it simple. This is a temporary. There are no benchmarks except for COVID. That's the only reason why I'm doing it. We are hurting some of our large restaurant businesses. And again, it's hurting their business model, but they're willing to go along. All those that have a right, the longer we extend it, the less they're willing to come in and get their permits. And two of them have stopped because they knew we were probably going to extend this. We have to incentivize people to take advantage of the rules that are in place. They can do it and move on. And some are, but for those that are not. So I think we're all fair. We'll review this in April 5th. It's 6 months. You're right. We could talk about this forever, try to look for benchmarks. But the fact is, the only reason we are here is because of COVID. COVID will become normalized. Who knows how soon? But we have the tools and mechanisms. It costs nobody a penny to do what we're doing right now. If we go beyond this, we're going to cause money. We're going to cause them to have to go through a design review process, new materials, aesthetics, and everything. Keep it simple. I think we have a home run here, and everybody will walk away happy. So, are we ready for a vote?
Mr. Mayor, before you vote, let me just make sure staff understands what it is you're doing here. And first of all, just as a reminder, as an urgency ordinance, this has to pass by a 4/5 vote. Okay, so we didn't say that earlier, but I wanted to make that clear. So my understanding is that on pages 2 and 3 of the ordinance, where we left blank the date, that date would be June 30, 2022.
Correct.
Then the part I'm not clear on is on page 3, section B, that talks about the conditions of approval. It's not clear to me whether you want us to add a condition there that
bold
says,
all the type up, bold it.
that just says thou shalt comply with all applicable provisions of the zoning ordinance.
The only thing it doesn't have is anything to reference and comply with all health ordinance, which also includes outdoor dining areas, which is under their jurisdiction.
Okay, so we'll add so now there will be B 1 through 5 instead of 1 through 4, and
Okay.
5 will say comply with all applicable zoning and health ordinances. And then,
But can it also, Dave, is there something we can do? Because, we don't want the signage to get out of hand. I mean, I want the businesses to be successful, but I don't think it's necessary to have banners and flags and things like this hanging all over. We have an ordinance in effect, and even though we're doing these parklets, we still need to maintain that ordinance. Is there somewhere we can put in there where it says, all prior ordinances remain in effect or something to that effect so that we can refer back to that. I don't want to see us not have the ability to go in and somebody starts putting, say, for instance, hula skirts all over their parklets, and we're standing here looking at hula skirts and we can't do anything.
So could we, that's a good point. So Dave, could we just add a line that references our existing sign codes and parklets shall be in compliance with all terms and conditions of our sign code?
You could do that. I don't know that it's necessary to do that because it's already in the code. And probably what's the most important is that we will be sending out a new land use permit, a revised extended land use permit to everybody that has a list of conditions of approval. What we'll do is take those portions of the ordinance that you're emphasizing, the sign, we'll kind of emphasize those in the conditions of approval and kind of make it clear that those are going to be a point of emphasis.
Perfect.
We have the ability to do that now. And I think the point that we're hearing loud and clear is that because temporary is lasting a little bit longer than we thought it was going to last, the preference would be to see us enforce that more than we have been. So I think we're hearing that loud and clear.
All right, as long as we have that, that's great.
Great.
So to Renee's point,
back to Rob.
To Renee's point, does that actually include temporary signage as well?
Well, that's under the signage code. It covers temporary signs.
So just to be clear, so we're not having political banners and anything that may be temporary.
Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to, that's where the confusion is coming in. And I think that if we just emphasize any previous ordinance, whatever, so that it's clear and
so we don't need a change in this, but Dave, you're going to, in the instructions if this passes, to add the references to our other codes, in particular the sign codes, so that people must comply with that as a reminder, including temporary signage.
Correct. At your direction are extension letters and conditions of approval that each and every one of these restaurants will receive will highlight those code sections that we want to kind of enforce and emphasize. Yes.
Perfect.
Okay, so are we, let me just, that's a little different than, so are we adding a fifth bullet point that says comply with all applicable zoning, sign, and health ordinances, or are we just?
Yes, I would. I would like to add that.
Okay,
I
so that's part of the motion.
Have that.
And then the last part of the motion, which is not in the ordinance itself, is that this will come back for your review at your April 5th meeting.
Yes, and that to make sure that it comes back to allow us to review it for consideration of extending it and or to let it sunset. So it's covered for both. Does that make sense? That gives us our option then.
Okay, great.
Okay.
So before we make this vote, I just have to ask one question.
Well, I'm sorry, it's not funny. I'm just for belaboring it. So it's okay. Go ahead.
Well, I'm hearing I'm hearing really good points from all the council members. And I know we're looking at June 30th with an April 5th or so review. Is there any support to get us past summertime and beyond June? So I know we have, I'm a yes on that. I see Karen's head going yes, and I think Dave's a yes. So
but what we're doing, but Robert, we do have the April review to be able to review that. So
no harm, no foul by leaving it the way it's proposed.
Right. We still have that opportunity.
We're off base. So we have it's clarified. So we have and I appreciate the comments, but to move on, we have a first and a second for an ordinance that talked about a date, not what you're talking about, Robert. That'd be a different ordinance. This one is here. Dave, did you have some last comments as well?
Yeah, what's magic about June 30th?
It's temporary.
Yeah, I know, but I guess where I'm going with this is it also sends the right message, I think, to our community as well, that we're working with them. And to do it right before the July 4th celebration,
I don't like it.
I don't like it. I really don't. It's like saying we're holding you hostage here by having it right before the July 4th celebration, which is the biggest event of the year.
Yeah,
Those are
agreed.
pretty strong words to say that it's not, this is temporary. If on April 5th, COVID's gone away, these ought to go away. That's our authority. Otherwise, we ought to be putting design standards. And again, those people, we're hurting some businesses and we're helping. There are only 11 downtown. Let's start to do the math. If you want to do it by gross receipts, the gross receipts probably show that their business is being hurt by this. So it's a balance. We could talk about this forever. Let's just keep it simple, extend it on. We're sending a message that is clear as can be. We support under the temporary extraordinary circumstances COVID has done, and this is what we're doing, and there's no cost for anybody to do this. But by the way, please, for those of you who want to keep this on a permanent basis where you're eligible, go get your permits. We've told them that 6 months ago, and nobody's pulled a permit.
You did.
So if we want to keep
That's it,
saying,
right.
yeah, it's kick that can down the road. So our message is go get your permits where you can.
Well, I think a lot of it is that people are actually waiting for the downtown master plan to come into play as well.
But
So
see,
there's
but that's
it doesn't
the
affect
issue
Parkwood.
as well. That's
Doesn't
the
really
issue
affect
as well. It
Parkwood.
has nothing to do with it. It's two separate issues. The issue is, and to Newell's point, I just wanted to reiterate this, we're talking about a group of people that have parklets. Not every single restaurant downtown has a parklet. So we need to be cognizant of other businesses as well. I mean, we're not just those businesses, we're everything. So, we've had the opportunity to review this in the past. I think if we keep kicking this can and not making date specific, we're not doing any justification to our businesses in
I
general.
agree. The date specific, I agree, but I don't think it should be June 30th. Here's why. We're really looking at April 30th. We're
Right.
not
So
going
here
to
no,
June
April
30th.
30th is the opportunity to extend it if we
April
think it's
5th.
appropriate.
April 5th.
Because the evidence is there. Okay.
But look, there seems like there's three people that would like to extend this beyond. I know we have a motion on the table. We haven't voted on this yet. I'm just saying we're looking, when you say April 30th, it means that we're going to review this April 30th. That someone just said that could actually mean that we're going to remove a parklet before the 4th of July parade. So it's not really June 30th. It's April 5th that we're going to be making this decision. We should, the message we got from Judy at the chamber was predictability to our businesses. Not April. It's not predictability. It's only 120 days away.
So
Let's
we're
get into
repeating,
summer.
we're repeating ourselves. I know we're repeating ourselves. Let's be honest.
Well,
So
if two people vote no, we don't have 4/5. I just don't
Well,
want
I mean,
that
I
to
don't
happen.
Let's
when
be
We got to
clear.
go back and
Let's be clear.
revisit all this.
let's be clear.
So
No matter what the vote is, as long as the majority votes for this, it takes effect. It just means if there's only 3 votes, it takes the first meeting. It won't happen. There will be a 11-day period that it wouldn't be in effect. That's the issue, because you'd have to have a second reading. If we have 4 votes for it, it takes effect immediately.
Well, I'm just not sure why we wouldn't want to extend this beyond June 30th. It doesn't.
Yeah. There were a lot of
Well, I think
reasons.
Joe wants to speak.
Yeah, Joe, sorry, thanks. Brandon.
I'm sorry, I'm just going to clarify what I believe the city attorney is going to tell you, which is it requires a 4/5 affirmative vote in either case.
Right.
You wanted to introduce this as a regular ordinance, not as an urgency. It would come back to you for second reading on January 11th, and it would go into effect 30 days thereafter. So that would mean between January 3rd and February 11th or 10th or whatever that would be, they would not be able to operate.
Outdoor parklets, right?
Correct.
So we have an opportunity for success, or we have an opportunity for failure. We know it. We know we can pass and do 6 months and move on. Doesn't cost anybody. I would strongly suggest, personal opinion, I will support for the 6 month and our review. And if we want to do it another 6 months in April, so be it. That's our choice. This is how we do business. We review things. We also need to incentivize people to do what they legally have the right to do now. And nobody has done it except for one has met with staff. And they said, gee, I've just been busy. So let's make a decision to move on and give clarity to the folks so that they know what they're doing for the next 6 months. So
Well, I think it does hinge a little bit on Karen. Sorry, Karen.
Well,
Yes.
but I
Well,
think,
probably-
Well,
you know,
no, Renee, you
Yes.
already spoke 3 times. Let me say again.
okay.
You're looking for a consensus. You've got 3 people who think it shouldn't be ending at a time when everybody's getting out of school, going to on holidays, and the huge parade that was disrupted is going to get disrupted again. I will support it because I'm very confused about what we do if you change to a different time period and you don't get 4 votes, then it's going to go away right now. And we don't want to see that happen. This is in a more difficult situation because it's an urgency. So we need to have a motion that at least 4 people are going to support right now.
If we don't do
Even
this,
3.
we're only, yeah, you're right, Karen. We're only going to have 3 votes for an
And
alternative.
so that's the
And then we're
problem.
done. And then we're really, it will go on those of you who didn't want. I mean, so I would say let's take a vote, move on. Nobody loses by us supporting this. Nobody.
No, look, and I agree that extending this is really important. There's no
Let's-
doubt. I mean,
let's
we're doing the right thing.
Okay, Marie, would you mind please calling the vote? Thank you.
Wait a minute, what is the motion? Because I'm still.
Okay, I'll repeat the motion. So the
Thank you.
motion is to extend the ordinance for the temporary parklets till June 30th with a review at a regularly scheduled council meeting on April 5th. And that we are adding the health code references. It's a code that's already compliant. We're just adding it to be listed in there. Also adding a line to reference that, yes, even though they already apply, just to reiterate that the sign ordinance and temporary sign ordinance applies, and that staff, when they do send out, if this passes, with the renewal package, they will reference all of those other ordinances that people must apply to. And there's no change in that. That's always been the case. We're not adding any changes. All we're doing is extending it 6 months and reviewing it on April 5th to see if we want to leave it to sunset on June 30th or add 3 or 6 months to it. That's our choice.
But if we sunset it on June 30th, what we're telling our businesses, they have to take their parklet down.
That's not the issue.
Before the 4th of July parade. I don't think that's fair.
It's not the issue. On April 5th, everybody will have the chance to talk about what we know and whether or not it's appropriate to even add more months. You can add another 6 months. No harm, no foul.
No, except if we make the decision on April 5th to remove the parklets on June 30th or before June 30th, that's right before the parade. Why wouldn't we extend it beyond that and give people the opportunity to have the parklets during the 4th of July parade with no chance of them going away?
So Robert, may I ask a question, Newell? Robert, what if last time, 6 months ago, we asked the businesses to come down to get permits and to do the right thing, right? We gave them 6 months to come down, apply for permits, and because we have other businesses that right now have outdoor seating and, parking and lieu fees. The town's a business. We're a business as well. So we're trying to give them the opportunity to make these things permanent. Within that time frame, I think we had 2 people come down out of the businesses that have parklets. We had 2 that went down to address the possibility of an application to have that addressed. And everybody else was waiting for us just to extend or to extend and to extend. And from my perspective, I want to help the businesses, and that's why we're here. We're here to help our businesses. We're here to make sure that we maintain the safety and the health of our residents as well. But they need to meet us a little bit here as well. And to Newell's point, he's saying, come down, apply for your permits, and let's get this ball rolling so that when we do get the master plan, you are also able to have your outdoor seating, extend it and all this. If we keep kicking that can and we don't put date specific and we keep kicking that can, these businesses will never come down and get their permits or never do what we're asking. It's just the nature of the game. So for us to ask for an April review and a June, it's what we were doing anyways. I've talked to some of the people that have restaurants that have the parklets and asked them if we extended it like this, if they would be, they said absolutely. They just needed to know dates so that they knew what to do with their parklets, that they're not going away on January 3rd.
So
So-
I see there's two components here. One is what businesses are going to do at some point when they all decide they want to put a parklet in and come in and apply for an application. What I see in front of me here is not to hurt the businesses, to extend it to a point where they can make some good decisions. Those parklets, a couple things to keep in mind. They're $30,000 to $45,000 to build. So if someone's got to come up with $30,000 to $45,000, they've got design criteria that we don't have yet until our master plan is in place, because that's where we're supposed to get this information on what our downtown looks like. So if you're making the decision based on when we're trying to force business to come in and make an application, that's not what I have here in front of me. What I have here in front of me is to extend this so that our businesses can be successful during a winter time with Omicron on the horizon. Delta is almost gone away apparently, and we're trying to keep our businesses in business. If they want to come in, listen, they'll come in at the end of summertime, not in before April. They'll come in when they want to come in to extend the parklet. I don't want to force them to do that. I want to extend this to give them plenty of time to make that decision. I'm taking money completely off the table right now. I don't care about the parking and lieu fees. I don't care about the cost of anything else except for one thing. Extend this to a point where it makes some sense so that businesses can have the cushion and the comfort level to make that decision that you're talking about.
What
for
date
me
is
beyond
that?
summer.
So
Beyond summer.
What
And if
date specific? What is your date specific, Robert?
I would say at a minimum, the end of summer. So that'd be
But what is that
August or
date? Is
September.
that, what is summer to you? August,
September
July,
1st.
September?
1st
So
would take me to a point where we could have that. We're way past the 4th of July. We're coming up to winter, and let's look at it and make a good decision, because we may need to extend this into winter because COVID may still be here.
right.
I'm
And
saying September 1st would be my absolute minimum.
so looking at a high level here, we're arguing amongst ourselves. When people are listening, they just want us to extend it. We've agreed to extend it. That's what's on the table. We can meet on April 5th. All the information we have, all the more knowledge we'll also have from staff to know how many businesses that are eligible to do a parklet, how many have actually come in and done that. Let's move on and send a simple, clear message. I get the passion. We all want to be whatever in this, and I'm stronger than you. I'm going to help more. We have to keep this simple and level. Staff would like this to be 6 months for all the reasons have been stated. If we see success in this, let's do it and move on. Everybody can enjoy Christmas and know we'll come back with great ideas. We'll have our first 2 reviews and presentations about downtown plan. We'll get to meet with our own consultants, which we haven't done yet. So why don't we take this as a wonderful opportunity to just say, yeah, we agree. Let's keep this going for 6 months. And by the way, if you got any new ideas, we're going to meet on the April 5th. And if you want to keep it for next 6 months, come in and tell us why, and let's go for it. Real simple. One more meeting. We're good at meetings. This,
Look, I've been pretty clear on 6 months is a great time period, except that it falls on the 4th of July. And I'm trying to.
it falls before that. There's a lot of people, I'm one of those, who would like to see these out of there before 4th of July, make the parade. You saw in the little tiny parade we had, thank God it was a small group of people, because it was challenging to have that. There are good actors, there are bad actors. There are people who are doing this to help out. Let's just move down. And if Robert, we see the compelling reason on April 5th, that's what we'll do. We'll move it out to September. We'll move it out to December. How's that?
Look, I think we're all doing the right thing. I think we're almost all saying the same thing, and we want to extend this. I appreciate that. We're a solid voice on extending this.
Okay. So we have a motion. So if we have a motion on the table. I see that this can pass or not. The alternative won't pass. So do you want to be the person to do that? I would suggest we vote on this and move on. And we are going to be heroes over this. And we've given great certainty to our business community.
So Noel, what happens if we don't get the majority past this? What is?
If we don't, then we have to have, you can do another motion or an alternate motion. And if that fails, then we're done. And we'll go to the next item. So I would call for the vote and move on.
Give us a clarification, Rob, on what that means done.
Okay, so again, to do this as an urgency ordinance, regardless of the date you want to plug in, takes 4 of you. Because you're waiving a second reading, you're waiving the 30-day delay, it becomes effective immediately. So if that motion fails, you have 2 options at that point. You could reintroduce it as a standard ordinance, which could pass with 3 votes. But as I said earlier, that would mean it comes back for second reading January 11th. And if it passes then, there's a 30-day delay before it goes into effect, which would take you to whatever 30 days thereafter is. So I think my math tells me that's about February 10th. So that would mean that between January 3rd and February 10th, they could not operate, these restaurants could not operate under these conditions without coming in and paying their parking in lieu fees. All right. It also would mean that because as part of the ordinance, the other thing the ordinance does is it extends the street closures, allowing folks to operate in the street. So that would go away as well during that time frame. So that would be one option. The other option would be to introduce another motion for another urgency ordinance that has a different date in it. And that again would take 4 votes.
Look, I don't think anybody's here to hurt the downtown businesses. Let's just get it to August 1st and at least split the difference here and get past 4th of July. If the maker motion would agree with that, I think that would get a comfort level to some of us on the other side here.
You know, Robert, I get where you're coming from. I'm just thinking that we have a review on April that gives us the opportunity to extend it if we so wish. I don't, you know, I think it's been said 1,000 times over. We're all here to make sure our businesses are successful. That's the point. But we also need to review, because this is not a permanent ordinance that we're doing, it's temporary. So we need to be cognizant of the other businesses as well, not just these parklets. And we need to be aware of that as well. So I personally stand firm with the date on, and if anybody else changes, I mean, I'm just one, but I think we're doing a review in April, which gives us the opportunity to review this again. And it gives us the opportunity to make sure that these businesses are doing what we've asked them to do as well.
I just
It's
don't
a
think
part-
we're different.
but it's a partnership.
It's a win-win. It's a compromise, Robert. You know what? We wouldn't be in this position if we weren't needing a 4/5 vote, but it's a compromise position. This allows all the dates that you might want in the future to happen. It's a destiny to success, not a destiny to failure.
Absolutely.
So I would urge
Absolutely.
everybody to support this because business goes on as we.
I agree. I think we should be
Okay.
better for this for 100%. I'm just,
Okay. No, we get that. We get it. You'd like a longer day. There's not the consensus to do that. So maker of the motion doesn't want to make that change. Okay.
And I apologize, I have to ask this question. In April, when we revisit this again, does it require a 4/5 vote in order to make a decision, or just a majority?
Majority.
Just a majority, and it allows us
This
to
is for
have,
the or. Yeah.
it allows us, plus it's at least 60 days before the end. That gives us enough time to have a second reading if we extend it. To do that, then it becomes effective 30 days later.
Okay, so the opportunity is at our April benchmark meeting. If we decide to extend it and there's 3 of the 5 that agree, then that would pass.
Simple majority, yes.
Okay,
Absolutely.
okay. Then I think
And I
there
would
is another
support
opportunity.
extending it if there's evidence to do that, and we have our businesses that are doing what
No,
they.
I think that becomes a win-win. I think it addresses what Robert, Karen, and I are pushing towards, and what you would like as well. And I think that's
Thank
a
you.
good win-win.
Great. Okay, so we ready for a vote?
Yeah, we're all pushing for that. We all
Marie-
want the success.
Marie, would you please call the roll?
Yes. Councilmember Fong,
Yes.
Councilmember Morgan,
Yes.
Councilmember Stepper,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Storer,
yes.
and Mayor Arnerich.
Yes, thank you all. And well done. I realize the passion. This is great. I think everybody knows what we want to do to help out.
Well, we don't want to hurt
Okay.
the downtown business.
So we're done.
Pretty clear.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I get it. We're not hurting. We just help. We did a great job. And we'll come back to this and get ready on April 5th. Okay, so this takes us to our next item on our agenda. And again, thank you for all that spoke on this, and we really appreciate your help and support. This takes us to item number 8.2, which is consider adoption of resolution 85, 2021, identifying applicable objective design standards, subdivision standards, design standards, and minimum submittal requirements related to the implementation of mandated requirements. Oh my God, of State Senate Bill 9. And Ty Williams and no, I think just Dave, you're taking this. Obviously, the reason why we're here is the state has mandated essentially that as of January 1st, 2022, that single family zoning in the state of California goes away. Danville is attempting to create an ordinance that will make the standards as far as we can fit as best they can for Danville. And Dave Crompton is our lead. Dave, welcome back.
Thank you and good evening once again. I'm the guy here to bring the bad news here. But you've all been briefed on SB 9, so you kind of understand what it is. So back in September, the mayor signed SB 9 into law. It goes into effect on January 1st. And so us, Danville, like many cities, are scrambling to put together ordinances or resolutions to address the development standards that we have in place and or that are part of the law, so that we can have those objective development standards that we can apply to SB 9 applications when they start hitting our doorsteps on January 3rd. So there's two main provisions of SB 9. Pardon me. And those are, number one, they allow for any home that's in a single family zoning district to develop a second primary residence. So any lot that currently has one home can now build two homes. And that's different than a home in an ADU, because an ADU has maximum sizes attached to it. So this would be basically two primary residences as large as they want, as long as they're able to meet the minimum standards. And the other part is the urban lot splits. So again, for any lot that is zoned for single family use in Danville or the state in general, may now, under most circumstances, subdivide into two lots using the urban lot split provision under SB 9. And so now each of those two lots, you can build two single family residences on one lot, and you can build another two on the second lot that was created under SB 9. So where today you have one single family home, under SB 9, you could have up to 4 single family homes on that same area of the lot. Some of the other limitations we have is that state law dictates that these are all to be reviewed at a ministerial level. So that means that there's no public notification, there's no appeal periods. They're basically yes or no. Do they meet the standards? Yes. Do they not meet the standards? No. If they do meet the standards, we must approve. And then another kind of potentially significant part of this is that these are exempt from CEQA. So, I think everybody's struggling with, well, what if these back up to a creek, or what if they're in certain areas that might have environmental impacts? Well, CEQA is not something that we can look at unless it's a health safety issue as part of these 9 lots.
You don't get it. That's a compromise, because in April you revisit.
So I'm not sure if that was an echo.
I'm hearing you somehow.
Oh,
No,
so
it's not. It's not.
Dave Fong, can you please mute, or Marie, can you mute him, please?
So what I'd like to do is go ahead and share my screen here, and I'm not going to walk you through every part of this ordinance, but this is the resolution. So this is the resolution 2021-08. And I should mention that the Planning Commission reviewed this at their meeting on last Tuesday and did recommend the town council adopt this, approve this ordinance. So I'm just going to highlight, I'm going to go over a few highlights of what SB 9 is. So again, it applies to any of our zoning districts that are single family residential. So that ranges all the way from our R6 district. So 6 means a minimum 6,000 square foot lot size, all the way up to our R100, which is 2.5 acre lot sizes. It also applies to many of our P1 districts that have underlying single family residential zoning standards attached to them. We don't have to allow more than 2 homes or 2 units per lot. And so if somebody chooses to build 2 primary residences, they don't get a ADU or a junior ADU. So it's limited to 2 per lot. They could do a primary residence, of course, and an ADU and a junior ADU and do 3. But if they take advantage of SB 9, there's only 2 units per lot. There's a number of provisions here that talk about eligibility, when a lot may not be eligible for SB 9. Most of these probably don't apply to Danville, but things such as, primary farmlands, wetlands, very high fire hazard severity zones, hazardous waste sites, earthquake fault zones, flood zones, etc. If you are a property that's in one of those types of areas that make it hazardous to build, you may not be allowed to use SB 9 to subdivide or to build a second residence. It also has a lot of exemptions. Really, they don't want to just place existing rental housing. So it would not apply if a house that is part of the development already has a recorded covenant for requiring moderate income households, or if the property is under rent or price control. Also, if the property has been occupied by a tenant, period, at any rate for the last 3 years, you're not subject to SB 9, either the second home or the subdivision. If it's a historic property, you probably aren't eligible to use SB 9. And then one good thing is that if you do use SB 9, you can't reuse SB 9. So if you split a lot on SB 9, you can't do a serial split and then come back and re-split it and get that many more lots. And that even goes a little bit further, that if you were in a neighborhood where you were involved with a SB 9 lot split directly adjacent to it, or involved in any ownership or partnership with an SB 9 lot next to you, you cannot exercise SB 9. So you can't, I guess it's kind of saying you can't kind of come in and take over a neighborhood and do multiple SB 9s adjacent to each other. So these are some of the primary development standards for the lot split portion of SB 9. So there's a kind of a rough proportionality between the lot sizes that are created. They have to be a minimum 60-40 split. So if you have a 10,000 square foot lot, you can't be less than 4,000 square feet with your smaller lot. But you can go all the way down to a 1,200 square foot lot. So if we happen to have a 2,500 square foot lot, single family lot here in town, you could theoretically subdivide it into 2 1,200 square foot lots. We can still apply, pretty much everything that we do under our building code. All the building codes apply. They have to meet fire department minimum standards. Anything that's subject to, potential health and safety, soils reports, flood zone studies, all that type of thing, we can still require. One thing that we've kind of has been evolving over the last few weeks as we've been continuing to study SB 9, and we've been working with other cities and kind of trying to define what can and cannot be done under SB 9. We've determined that we can still require that whether it's a new single family home or a lot split with 1 or 2 new homes, we can still impose our side and rear yard setbacks that are under our zoning districts. So if you have a R10 or an R15 district, it has a 10-foot side yard on one side, 15 on the other, and a 20-foot rear yard setback. We can still require those that the new homes meet those setback standards, unless we are required that we allow for up to 2 minimum 800 square foot units. And so if a property owner wanted to exercise SB9 and our development standards precluded 2 800 square foot units, then we would have to waive some standards to allow them to get there. And we've kind of defined here the priority of the standards that we would waive. We would waive the side yard first, rear yard second, and then only get to the secondary front yard and front yard setbacks, creek setbacks, and then some of our setbacks and slope requirements in our hillside areas. I also should have mentioned up here that we can't continue to apply our front and secondary front yard setbacks that are applicable to whatever zoning district that they are in. Unfortunately, in our downtown or in our single family residential ordinance, our maximum height for any single family home is 35 feet and 2.5 stories. And we don't have anything that we can't, under previous state laws, we can't go in and create new development standards that would lessen the development potential of the lot. So we're stuck with the 2.5 story, 35 feet generally. We do have a lower height in scenic hillside areas of 28 feet that we can bring over as an existing objective standard. We do have a maximum height of 24 feet in major ridgeline areas that we can bring over as an objective standard. We have standards in our hillside ordinance that say you can't build within 100 vertical feet of a ridgeline or on a 30% slope. And those are objective existing that we can use that are in this resolution. Similar to ADUs, the SB9 allows for you to require 1 parking space on site as long as you are a half mile away from some certain traffic corridors or ride sharing stations. It's silent on whether that should be a garage or not. It's parking space, since our existing ordinance has objective standards that require garage parking spaces. We're putting in here that 1 parking space would be a garage parking space. A couple things related to occupancy of homes built on these parcels is that if you do an SB9 split and you take advantage of that, the property owner has to live in one of the 2 units for 3 years, and they have to sign an affidavit stating that. If it is not an SB9 lot split, it's just a 2-unit development, the law does not prohibit a occupancy requirement. And so we are providing a standard here that says that the owner would need to live in one of the 2 residences in that case, when it's 2 homes being built on one lot that wasn't an SB9 subdivision. And that would be put forward as a deed notification. And the rest of this really kind of gets into our development or submittal standards. And that'll be kind of something that staff will be using. What we've already done is modified a planning application to include SB9 developments. And we've also, we're working on a FAQ checklist to hand out to folks that will have all these development standards and all the submittal requirements on them, so they'll know what we're looking for when they submit. And so hopefully we'll be ready in January. So that concludes my presentation here. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Great, David. David, thank you so much, and along with the rest of your team, going through trying to find as many ways to make this fit for Danville, but we appreciate it. Karen, questions?
Okay, so yeah, I do have 3 questions. I mean, I have a lot of problems with the bill, but we don't have any choice on local control anymore. So the first one is on page 5 of the resolution, D. Housing that has been occupied by a tenant in the last 3 years doesn't qualify. I don't understand that. Is that something in the state law?
Yes,
Is
that
that
is in
what
state
it's
law.
in?
That is in state law. It basically says that you're not eligible for SB9 development. If you're not eligible to tear down housing that would be used for SB9 development. You're not eligible to tear down a tenant space or a house that's been rented for the last 3 years if you're trying to implement a SB9 lot split or a 2-lot development.
Otherwise, you'd have to not do that. And you could sell the property or change the use to home ownership at that point.
And wait 3 years, yeah.
And wait, okay, so this is one of the state law problems. Okay, then number 3,
If
right
I can,
below that.
Hey, Karen, if I could jump in there.
Oh, yeah, okay.
In a community like ours where we do not have rent control, it would be different. So if let's say someone wanted to do this, they could move the tenant out, and then they still would have to run the clock on the 3 years. In a place that had stricter rent control, that's going to be a lot harder to get the tenant out, but you still would have to run the 3 years, even with a change in ownership.
And this only applies if you're going to, it prevents you from demolishing it. Doesn't prevent you from doing lot splits.
Correct.
Okay, the thank you. Number 3, right underneath that, this was about the historic district. Do we not need to define where our historic district is, or it just seems a little bit vague, and I'm just worried about whether I don't want to lose our incentives for the historic district, and I'm afraid they're going to change here, or they're going to have a stop place where we are now and not let us go forward. Is that a problem?
But what we have now, Danville does not have a designated historic district. We have individually designated heritage resources throughout town. I think we've got about 25 designated heritage resources. And so the state law allows us to apply this to heritage landmarks, which would be parallel to a designated heritage resource. So in essence, this would only apply to our designated heritage resources.
So if we had future ones to designate, that's going to be a problem.
I guess if a property owner wanted to potentially SB9 lot split or build a second, then yeah, they might be hesitant to designate.
Oh, hesitant. No, I was thinking that it wouldn't even be allowed on that property.
No, they would be allowed. So again, I think if you called it, since our heritage ordinance is purely voluntary on the part of the property owner, I think Dave's use of the term that may not be incentivized to do it. They may not want to, but we can still designate properties. We still can create historic districts.
Okay.
Yeah, so it doesn't impact that.
Thank you. That's very clear. And then the last question, you keep saying in here as you went through this, and I appreciate the review. It said these are objective standards that we've had in the past, so we can put them into this resolution. Is that just our opinion? Is this going to get challenged somewhere in law or by a developer or?
Well, the law allows us to use to apply objective development standards, and it also kind of piggybacks on SB 330 that was approved a couple years ago. The state, I guess that was at the Housing Crisis Act, and which basically says that cities are not allowed to create new ordinances that impose new development standards that lessen the development potential for residential lots, multifamily or single family. So we're really limited to taking this development standards that the state has given us here under SB 9 and then kind of gathering together all the development standards we have in our existing ordinances adopted, more than 2 years ago, and making sure that we find all those and apply them here.
Okay, so I guess I'm going to hope that these are as objective as someone else would see that if they're building. So thank you.
Well, these are all objective. Whether or not the state agrees that we have the ability to impose certain objective standards, I guess, was another question.
That's what I'm worried about it, but there's nothing we can foresee right now. So thank you.
Great, thanks, Karen. Robert?
Great, Dave. Thanks for the report, and I think you're hearing it that I don't think any of us love this whole thing. So, couple questions. on the page one, I know we keep talking about objective standards, and it's written throughout this report. Is there language we can bring from the state that defines what an objective standard really is?
Yeah, the SB 9 has a definition section and includes a definition of objective development standards that we can pull over here.
Yeah, my suggestion would be to carry that over. And then a couple of questions on page 6 of the reso. And a scenario first. So I subdivide my house. Can I come back in and build an ADU unit in the backyard or side yard or attach it to my home?
Yes.
Okay, so the first one on number 1, the minimum side yard and rear yard setback shall conform to the existing setbacks established under the respective zoning district. So what that tells me is an ADU has to be more than 4 feet from the property line. It has to match the zoning setbacks in that district.
Well, there's two different things. So what SB 9 is allowing for is not a primary residence in an ADU, but allowing for 2 primary residences on 1 lot. And this language here that says we are still going to apply our side and rear yard setbacks to a second primary residence is what we're talking about here. The ADU ordinance is separate. The ADU did specifically say that you cannot require setbacks greater than 4 feet. And so if it's an ADU, it can go to within 4 feet automatically. If it is a second residential unit under SB 9, we can hold them to the setbacks that the primary residence would otherwise be held to.
So it's a more restrictive setback.
Yes. Very
okay. Good.
Yeah, I think Robert, to give you a scenarios, individual property owners may have to look at whether they can add a second primary or can they only do an ADU? Because they can get with an ADU, they can get down to a 4-foot side and rear yard setback. So property owners look at what works best for them, given their particular property.
Okay.
And then on page 8 of the reso, where we're talking about septic tanks under E, so it'd be 4E. If there's a sewer in the street, don't we normally require that it's tied into the sewer and the septic tank is abandoned?
In 99.9% of the cases, yes.
So should we have language in there that actually says that exactly, that we, if there's a sewer available, that this project has to tie into that sewer to be developed?
I don't know. What do you say, Rob? Can require, because theoretically they could go to the health department and they could find that they have the proper size of parcel, which I think you are required to have an acre, and then they have the correct percolation rates and they're able to, do all that. So I'm not sure if we can impose that.
Yeah, I think I'm not sure it's an objective standard because there is. It's not like if you're within X number of feet, you have to tie in. You have to be within X number of feet and it has to perk. If it's still perking, I think you can still do it.
Well, then it should say then if the septic tank needs to be upgraded because it's based on bedrooms, it's based on leach fields and lineal footage of leach field. If it has to be upgraded and a sewer is available, I think it should be tied into the sewer.
Well, these building permits will still go through the processes that we would have previously. And so if they're proposing to stay on a septic or private well, they're going to be routed to the Contra Costa County Health Department, and they have a whole list of standards that need to be met for them to be able to provide a private system. So, that's, the cost of it and how they want to weigh that might be up to them.
And this relates to a second primary unit, and the second primary unit has to have its own separate connection and or standalone separate leach field septic tank. It's not, you can't connect into the other. They're 2 legally separate, so they have to meet that lot standard, separate PG&E meters, separate all of that. So
yeah, I think an attached, let's call it an ADU attached, could tie into an existing septic and not have to go into.
This ordinance isn't at all about ADUs. You're right. ADUs can do that. This has nothing to do with ADUs. This is only Just
And then-
split the lot and do 2 standalone single-family homes.
Yeah. And then Dave, what about, PG&E upgrades that need to take place? Are we asking the applicant to ensure that PG&E upgrades can be made? And, East Bay mud water meters need to be updated or upgraded as well before they put an application in?
Well, that type of plan review would be part of our standard either subdivision review process or building permit process. I mean, yes, they, we can't, we don't have to, and we wouldn't approve anything that is a life, health, safety type of issue. So they have to meet all the current building code requirements. They have to meet all the regulations for all the service providers. And so it's just, this is really just about adding density. It's not about not allowing or not requiring them to meet all of the code requirements.
Okay, Dave, thank you.
Renee, sorry. We lost Robert there. I thought something happened.
Somehow my power is really low here, so if you lose me, I'll figure it out.
Okay.
We'll circle back and look for you.
And I'm plugged in, by the way.
Well, Robert touched on a couple of my questions, but I did, this is, first of all, I wanted to emphasize, just like Karen and Robert, and I'm sure the rest of us council have, this is emphasized, this is state telling us what to do, not what our standards are. And this is definitely crazy. Anyways, page 6 of the reso, I wanted to take a look at, David, number 1, number 2, and number 5. When you look at those, I can't wait until we get the question and answer sheets that you have. And you might want to really emphasize on that, because you look in here and it says minimum side yard and rear yard. And then you've got down here, front and secondary front yard shall conform to existing setbacks. And you go back and say no setback shall be required for an existing structure or structure constructed in the same location. If I'm reading that, I'm totally confused if I don't understand what's going on. So I just wanted to kind of point those bullets out there that it's a little confusing. Do you agree, or do you think that?
Oh yeah, and it comes from state. Some of it comes from state law, and some of it comes from the objective development standards that we have on our books. It's really the number 5, the number 5 about existing structures. It was similar with ADUs. If you had an existing structure, you could either replace it, kind of the same basic size or dimensions, or you can rebuild it. And if existing building has no setback, and it has no setback, and you have to allow it, it has to meet building. They'd have to do special building code, construction, what have you, to make it pass building code. But that's just part of state law, part of the law.
So number 5, if it's an existing ADU and it's 4 foot from the fence, they have to allow it to be built there.
Yeah, so this is SB 9, but our ADU ordinance and the ADU law says the same thing, that if it's on a property line, 0 setback, you have to allow it.
Yeah, number 5 is verbatim out of the state law. Number 1 and 2, number 1 is, Dave sort of alluded to it, the draft that went to the planning commission had different language there, and we changed that the day of the planning commission hearing to do this. And there is some, to be clear, to go back to Karen's question earlier about getting challenged on this, that number 1, there is some dispute about whether we can do that, or whether or not you have to live with the 4 foot side and rears like you have to do on an ADU. So that was changed. And then number 2, I think Dave can elaborate, but we put that in there because that issue came up with ADUs also. So we wanted to have that clear in there.
Yeah, we've always, even under ADUs, we were able to implement or enforce front yard setbacks, the same as they would be for a primary residence. Our ADU ordinance also says that you have to meet secondary front yard setbacks, which are typically 5 feet less than a primary front yard setback. But we were told later by the state that we were interpreting that wrong, and we cannot enforce secondary front yard setbacks, and they can go all the way down to 4 feet. The state law, this SB 9 seems a little bit even less clear on that issue. So we're trying again here on the secondary front yard setbacks, and we'll go with that until we're told we can't.
Thank you.
Yeah. So the other thing is in reference to utilities, the PG&E and undergrounding the wires and all that. Because I know that when we were talking about new developments coming in, we were always talking about doing underground wiring and requiring that. Can that be part of this?
It's part of our subdivision ordinance.
Okay, so it's definitely a part of this then.
Yeah, and I didn't go all the way to the end of this, but there is some language in here later that under our submittal and subdivision ordinance requirements.
Okay, so it refers to that. Perfect. Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Councilmember Fong. Thanks.
Yeah. First, I want to apologize for that sidebar conversation I had. I wasn't on mute, and I should have been on there. I just want to apologize to the council in town. But my question to you, Dave, is, and you may have already referenced it in by another council member, but regarding the major ridge line and scenic hillside provisions 7, 8, and 9, are those state mandated, or is that our introduction to our criteria?
No, those are lifted and brought over from our scenic hillside and major ridgeline ordinance. That is a town ordinance. Okay. That already has those objective development standards built into it. So we feel like we can continue to enforce those standards, and we wanted to bring them over to this resolution.
What's your level of confidence that these 3 will be accepted by the state?
Well,
and I understand, I'm just asking your opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think Rob could probably weigh in as well, but it's going to be the same as the setbacks, and that they have the right to build 2 800 square foot residences, and we would have to waive standards that we would need to waive to get to a point where they can build an 800 square foot home. And that might mean, maybe that doesn't mean allowing them to build on the ridgeline. Maybe we can get the 800 square feet, 75 feet below the ridgeline, or something less than the 100. We don't have to back up on our standards all the way. We can reduce our standards to a point necessary to allow them to build 800, but it wouldn't be as offensive, or it wouldn't be as a visible development on a hillside as if we allowed it to be on the ridgeline.
Dave, you've answered my question. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Dave. Dave, I just had a couple simple ones on affordable units that are existing. So a single family that we have a deed restriction, are they eligible as well to do a split?
They would potentially be eligible for a lot split, but they could not tear down the affordable unit.
Because that's one restriction, but they still are eligible. And that'd be true then of, say, an apartment building that's 100% affordable, and they could carve off some land. Can they do that on multifamily?
No, this is for single family residential districts only.
Perfect. Okay. And on page 6 of the reso, item number 1, we have in the middle of that paragraph there, it says city council. I'm sure that'd be town council. I think that's the only one. Okay. Well, great. Thank you again for all the heavy lifting to get something that's so unpleasant for all of us to have to look at, but because of Senator Scott Wiener and the state's wisdom by a few people. This now will take us to the opportunity for open the public hearing. And if there's anybody in the public who would like to address the council on this item specifically, please use your raise hand function at the bottom of your screen and we will call on you. Is there anybody here, attendees, who would like to speak to the council on this item? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing on that. And Marie, did you receive any written comments on this item?
No written comments received on this item.
Okay, great. All right, so the item is back before the council for just further discussion, action.
Well, I don't think we have a choice, so.
Right.
This hasn't been a very pleasant night here with SB 9. So resolution, I'm making a motion reluctantly to number 85 to 2021, identifying applicable objective development standards, subdivision standards, design standards, and minimum submittal requirements related to the implementation of a mandated requirements of State Senate Bill 9. Now I apologize, I had some technical difficulties here, so I didn't catch everything, but we are moving the objective standard definitions over to this document here.
Yes.
And I would look for your help on identifying any of the other things that were important here, but that's the only two things I think.
That was really, we had the typo town versus city, and I think that was really all we had.
Yeah, the change the city to a town, yes.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Storr. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Councilmember Fong and a first by Vice Mayor Storr. Any further discussion?
Well, just to note that we can't vote no on this.
Yeah. No.
So just be real clear. If we could vote no, we would vote no. We can't.
I think what this does, and we all know this, that we always try to make things fit to the best standards of Danville, and those are high standards. It protects property values, what makes our community safe. I think staff has done the best job that they can, and Rob has, to make what standards we believe will apply. And if you look at these, it's going to make it a little bit more challenging on some of those areas. And if that's what we can say we did, then we have done something to make it a little bit better. So
agreed.
Okay, well, Marie, would you please call the roll? Thank you.
Councilmember Fong,
Yes.
Councilmember Morgan,
Yes.
Councilmember Stepper,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Storer,
Yes.
and Mayor Arnerich.
Yes.
Unanimous.
Great. And Dave, again, thank you for all the work on this. We really appreciate it. And I
You
know we
are
have more to-
welcome.
Yeah, we have more to go on other things as we learn. So, okay, we are moving along on our agenda. This takes us to item number 9.1 under administrative staff reports. And this is consider proposed solid waste and recycling rates for 2022 rate year 8, and forward a recommendation for a 2% rate increase to the Recycle Smart JPA. And Diane Freeman, boy, I hear echo. Who is that? Somebody has something on. There's an echo of when we're speaking now, Diane. Does somebody have a door open if you guys are too close to each other?
I'm hoping it's not me.
Okay, Diane, you're up.
Okay, good evening, Mayor and Town Council. I am pleased to be before you this evening to present the staff report, item 9.1, to consider solid waste and recycling rate year 8, and forward a recommendation of a 2% increase to Recycle Smart Joint Powers Authority. The town has been a member of the Joint Powers Authority named Recycle Smart since 1994 to provide solid waste and recycling services. We share membership with Moraga, Orinda, Lafayette, Walnut Creek, and unincorporated areas of Contra Costa County. The benefit to this combined membership is the creation of economies of scale of solid waste expenditures, which are among the lowest in the East Bay, as well as keeping our service levels high. Recycle Smart is governed by a board of directors composed of 2 members from each agency. Mayor Arnerich and Councilmember Morgan currently serve on the board of directors. Recycle Smart is currently entering rate year 8 of service under a current 10-year agreement. Recycle Smart will be considering their 2022 rates at a public hearing on January 27, 2022. New rates become effective on March 1st, 2022. These rate costs are associated with delivering the services required to serve their customers. The rates that are charged go towards paying the hauler Republic Services, Mount Diablo Recycling, maintaining adequate reserve levels to account for unexpected fluctuations in service costs, administrative fees, the reuse and cleanup program, franchise fees, and vehicle impact fees, which are charged to mitigate the impact that the refuse collection vehicles have on our streets townwide. For the upcoming year, the total revenue requirement is just over $11.7 million. And as the result of that, there is a rate increase recommendation of 2%. The table on page 4, the back page of your staff report, illustrates the rates of service in other cities. We use the 32-gallon container as a benchmark. The cost increase of 2% for the town equates to a 65 cents per month in rate increase. The lowest rate increase throughout the cities comprising the JPA is 0%, the lowest, to the highest of 7% this year. Our rate adjustment is still competitive and below average of the East Bay cities. The town is focused on maintaining our reserves as we move into the last 3 years of our franchise agreement, as recycling costs continue to increase and costs associated with the implementation of SB 1383 come into focus. This will continue to create rate pressure and the likelihood of utilizing those reserves to offset future increases. As an update to the town's requirement to comply with SB 1383. The 10% franchise fee is charged to the service providers for exclusive rights granted to deliver the service. The vehicle impact fee is to offset the almost 40% of wear and tear on our street systems. We invest millions of dollars in maintaining our streets for drivers and bicyclists. All franchise fee dollars and vehicle impact fees are reinvested in Danville's street system through street maintenance and the pavement management program. Staff recommends Town Council approve solid waste and recycling rates for 2022 rate year 8 and forward a recommendation of a 2% increase to the Recycle Smart Joint Powers Authority. Before I conclude my report, I would like to provide an SB 1383 procurement update to Council. As noted in this report, SB 1383 compliance requirements will continue to place pressure on rates. SB 1383 requires all local jurisdictions adopt procurement policies addressing the purchase of organic recycled materials. The law sets minimum amounts of organic recycled materials which must be acquired by the town and requires detailed tracking of all purchases by both the town and any contractors used by the town. The town is required to procure over 3,500 tons of recycled organic products in 2022 alone. Recycle Smart has worked with Republic Services to secure an arrangement with Forward Inc. Compost, the Republic Services facility that processes the residential and commercial yard trimmings and food scraps collected in our service area. The yard trimmings and food scraps become finished compost that is sold by Forward. When Forward sells the finished compost, the buyer of the finished compost will serve as a direct service provider by agreeing to purchase and use the compost on behalf of Recycle Smart member agencies. So Recycle Smart will report the tons of finished compost from Forward facility attributable to the town's organic waste product procurement obligation in the annual report to Cal Recycle. Recycle Smart expects this new arrangement will fully satisfy the town's organic waste procurement requirements and will continue year over year. So that is very good news for us. It does not alleviate the town's reporting requirements or our obligations to procure paper, but it will satisfy our obligations to meet our goal for 2022. And with that, I will turn it back over to you, Mayor Arnerich, for any questions.
Great, Diane, thank you for that. And that was the part of that last discussion was something that was very worrisome, as Diane reported before, that we could not consume the 35 tons of that magnitude. And this helps solve for all of our agencies long-term. All of the other items, yes, we have to comply, but we've complied with most of them already. So this really was the gorilla on our back. We thought we had only a monkey, it was a gorilla, but we're in great shape. So questions of Diane? Okay, seeing none. Rob, do we, do we really need to do, is this open for public comment? Yes. So at this point in time, we'll open this for public comment. If there's anybody who would like to comment on item number 9.1 regarding our recycling rate increase proposal, please raise your virtual hand and we'll call on you. Is anybody there who'd like to speak on that? Seeing none, then we'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the council. Discussion or action or a motion?
I'll make a motion to.
I'm sorry, Dave raised his hand just slightly.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Say, just a comment. I asked Joel to pull up the trend of rate increases for the last 7 years. And the increases range from 2.8% up to as high as 8%. So this 2% increase is relatively low compared to what we've been trending over the last 7 years. And that's my comment.
Great, thank you. We are out of 24 of the entities listed there, we're number 8 towards the bottom. So well done, Robert, and then Karen.
Just a comment and to you, Mayor, and to Renee Morgan, council member. You guys are doing a great job on this board here, and it's phenomenal. When I open up my garbage bill and I look at it, I think, oh my God, this is reasonable. And to raise it 65 cents. And I honestly think we should take this rate comparison that's on the back page, Diane, put it on our website so people can actually see where we are at. And Piedmont pays $93 and we pay $33. So, right, or $32.55 currently. So phenomenal. So good job, and
keep it up.
Asking to vote for this.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you. We're going to make a motion.
Yeah, I actually wanted to make a motion because this is just a continuing 20-year success story in terms of Danville and the work that's being done here. Thank you both.
Right. Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Oh, I think Renee raised her hand technically first. So a motion by Karen Stepper to accept the recommendation to move this on as presented, and a second by Renee Morgan. Any further comments, discussion? Seeing none, Marie, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Fong?
Yes.
Councilmember Morgan?
Yes.
Councilmember Stepper?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Storer?
Yes.
And Mayor Arnerich?
Yes.
It's unanimous.
Great. Thank you. And Diane, thanks for all the work. And really delighted that we're heading the right direction. As Dave pointed out, the rates are fantastic. Okay, this will take us to, we've never had this many that I've ever recalled. Item number 10 has 8 appointments. We're going to do these as fast as we can, if that's okay, and then we'll get to our last 3 reports. So 10.1 is to appoint a planning commission representative to the design review board for a 4-year term beginning January 1st, 2022. Ask Dave Fong to make that recommendation. Dave, you're on mute. Sorry. Now you're on mute. You're still muted. Oops. Well, I tell you what, Dave, if we can't get you off mute.
Want me to just make the recommendation?
Yes, Robert,
do.
So I make the recommendation that we appoint Planning Commissioner Chris Trio.
Okay.
As representative of the Design Review Board.
Marie, do we have to call the roll on all of these?
Yes.
Okay. And technically, we don't need seconds for.
You don't need a second?
Yeah.
You're making a motion to appoint. You do need a second.
Okay, thank you. And it's seconded by Renee Moore. Okay. Then please call the roll.
Councilmember Fong?
Probably just a thumbs up would be good.
Yes, gave a thumbs up for yes.
Affirmatively. Councilmember Morgan?
Yes.
Councilmember Stepper?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Storer?
Yes.
And Mayor Arnerich?
Yes.
And the motion was unanimous to appoint Chris Trujillo.
Right. Item number 10.2, appoint 1 council member and alternate council member to MCE Clean Energy Board of Directors for a 1-year term beginning January 1st, 2022. And we nominate Dave Fong as the board member and Robert Storer as the alternate. Is there a second?
Second.
Marie, will you call the roll, please?
Yes. Councilmember Fong? Affirmative.
Yes.
Councilmember Morgan?
Yes.
Councilmember Stepper?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Storer,
I want Dave to fill like he's got people here with him.
and Mayor Arnerich.
Yes.
Unanimous.
Great. This takes us to 10.3 to appoint 2 council members to the Recycle Smart Board of Directors for a 1-year term beginning January 1st, 2022. That'd be Mayor Arnerich and Councilmember Morgan. Is there a second?
Second.
Marie, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Fong? Affirmative.
Yes.
Councilmember Morgan?
Yes.
Councilmember Stepper?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Storer?
Yes.
And Mayor Arnerich.
Yes.
Unanimous.
10.4, appoint 1 council member, 1 alternate council member to the County Connection Board of Directors for a 1-year term beginning January 1st, 2022, and appointing Vice Mayor Robert Storer and alternate council member Dave Fong. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Morgan. Marie, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Fong?
That's a thumbs up.
Affirmative there. Councilmember Morgan?
Yes.
Councilmember Stepper?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Storer?
Yes.
And Mayor Arnerich.
Yes.
Unanimous.
We finally got some humor here. We're watching Dave. Okay, item 10.5, appoint 1 council member, 1 alternate council member to the Tri-Valley Affordable Housing Committee for a 1-year term beginning January 1st, 2022. Recommend to appoint Councilmember Morgan and alternate Councilmember Stepper. Is there a second? Is there a second? Second by Morgan.
I'm distracted with Dave Fong. I'm sorry.
Marie, would you please call the roll?
Okay. Councilmember Fong?
We have no idea.
No, he's stalled.
Okay,
out.
It's
I'll
frozen
come
on my
back.
screen.
I'll come back to Councilmember Fong. Councilmember Morgan?
Yes.
Councilmember Stepper?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Storer?
Yes.
And Mayor Arnerich.
Yes.
That one's going to be 4-0 as Councilmember Fong was not present for that vote.
All right, this will take us to item number 10.6, appoint 2 council members, 1 alternate council member of the Traffic Board of Directors for a 1-year term beginning January 1st, 2022. That's to appoint Mayor Arnerich and Councilmember Stepper and alternate Morgan.
I think it was Fong.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, can't read the, alternate Fong.
Second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Marie, would you call the roll, please?
Yes. Councilmember Fong is absent. Councilmember Morgan?
Yes.
Councilmember Stepper?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Storer?
Yes.
And Mayor Arnerich.
Yes.
And that is a 4-0 vote.
Dave Fong is now in as an attendee. Could we elevate him?
To a panelist.
Thank you, Karen. Yes, a panelist. I was just
Elevate
shocked to
him.
see his hand. He had his hand up there.
Let me in, let me in.
Okay.
He's still
back.
muted. He's
Oh,
still
that's all right.
muted.
At least his name is showing up. Okay, this takes us to item 10.7. Appoint 1 council member to the Tri-Valley San Joaquin Valley Regional Rail Authority for a 1-year term beginning January 1st, 2021. Motion is to appoint Councilmember Stepper. Is there a second?
Second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Marie, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Fong?
Yes.
Councilmember Morgan?
Yes.
Councilmember Stepper?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Storer?
Yes.
And Mayor Arnerich.
Yes.
Unanimous.
Perfect timing. Councilmember Fong is back for item 10.8 to give us a brief liaison report from our planning commission. Dave.
Yeah, thank you. And I apologize. I'm having technical difficulties. My laptop froze on me, and unfortunately, it's still frozen. So I'm on an alternative laptop. So just a quick update on the Planning Commission. I've been the liaison for this past year, and just a quick highlight and preface on the Planning Commission's role and responsibility. As we all know, they diligently oversee the town's land use and their physical development proposals, including ongoing review and updates to the general plan. Relating to land use, the Planning Commission oversees how land and buildings are used for commercial and residential projects. And for development projects, they're brought before the commission for approval to ensure that the projects are consistent with the Danville's small town atmosphere while in accordance with the town's general plan, zoning ordinance, and state and federal laws. The Planning Commission consists of 7 commissioners and an alternate commissioner. And I want to extend personal acknowledgement and appreciation to the commitments and contributions of Mark Graham, the chair, Chris Trujillo, the vice chair, Bob Combs, Archie Bowles, Bob Ficken, Mary Grace Houlihan, Lou Palandrani, and Paul Radich, and a special recognition to Dave Crompton and his staff for their leadership and really keeping us focused on the role of the Planning Commission. So we take a look at the accomplishments for the Planning Commission for 2021. And again, it's just my assessment, but the commission approved approximately 64 homes, and we're really involved with what I consider minor and major subdivision developments of existing parcels, including architectural and landscape design. As we take a look at accomplishments, I think moving on, some of them were on Coolit Lane, Tassahara Lane, a tree removal at Love Lane, 53 senior housing at 375 West Pintado, and assortment of different other land use permits that were requested for a review. Planning Commission for 2022 has got a lot of challenges, and Robert Storr, you're going to be playing a very active role as the liaison, working with the Planning Commission and on behalf of the town and the town council as well, because we've all said it. We've got a bad law that we've got to comply with. It's called SB 9. And how do we manage and achieve our goal of retaining small town experience while also needing to comply? Secondly, we're going to be involved, and Dave Crompton has already shared his comment regarding the drafting and reviewing for approval of the EIR. And that has to be prepared and needs to be incorporated with the town of Danville's 2023 to 2031 housing element update. A lot of work, a lot of heavy lifting, and a lot of involvement by the Planning Commission on that whole draft. And then we have the impact of SB 9 again, as we said, working with the town council on the framework and criteria for objective approval standards, which we did approve today. And finally, the last two, which is one, multi-density housing. What does all that mean? How do we build that into our master plan, and at the same time retain the small town atmosphere and the reasons why people move to Danville? And the final point is having to do with the update to the master plan for downtown Danville. And again, looking forward to that, and looking forward to the Planning Commission playing a role in helping us develop the downtown plan for the next 10 to 20 years. That's my update on Planning Commission. Any comments or questions?
Great, Dave. Thank you for that. It was very nice of you to recognize both board members and the staff as well for their work over this year. Any questions of Dave? Seeing none, Dave, you're up again. 10.9.
Yeah, so
MCE.
This is my involvement with MCE, and again, just a little bit of rehash, but I think it's important that we recognize that that there is an alternative PG&E, and that MCE is one of the CCAs, or what we consider, the acronym is for a community choice aggregator. What it does is MCE and the CCAs allow for residents and businesses to purchase electricity from locally controlled public agencies operating on behalf of their communities. It also provides the opportunity for communities to really buy energy that benefits from reinvestments in tailored programs and services, as well as address areas of social equity, economic and workforce development opportunities, etc. The CCAs, such as MCE, also offers a unique value proposition that allows communities to control where their energy comes from and how that energy and how those electricity dollars are spent. And MCE, I think, as I share a little bit of what they've been able to accomplish this past year, demonstrates that they are aligned and committed on service and support of our community. Currently, there's about 200 communities that participate in one of the 24 CCA programs across the state, servicing almost 11 million customers. Number of Californians who have the CCA options today have grown from 1% in 2010 to approximately 30% today. California aims to have 60% of its energy produced from renewable resources by 2030 and is currently obtained approximately 31% renewable and 55% greenhouse gas free. The statewide growth in CCA continues, and with a number of jurisdictions that are currently on planning and enrolling with existing PPAs in the next few years. So there definitely is a significant growth in alternative energy sources other than the incumbent. The state of MCE, what's important to recognize is that currently they are in 4 counties, Marin, Napa, Contra Costa, and Solano. And in 2022, they'll be enrolling customers from Fairfield. And it's expected that they'll be able to add 5 more jurisdictions from within Contra Costa County, as 4 from Solano County over the course of the next several years. What's important to recognize is MCE's core strength and their focus is really working with the 4 counties that are currently customers today and really optimizing the opportunities for providing us with efficient energy. The bottom line is that from a financial perspective, and I think that's important, is they have a very strong financial position with excellent reserves that meet or exceed industry standards for fiscal responsibility. Their credit ratings, and what's important here is to recognize that they have very successful management despite COVID-19 challenges, and they have lack of debt as primary reasons why they currently have a very strong rating with S&P. And by the way, they have an A rating as of February of 2021. Now, the little bit of bad news is that MCE is proposing a rate increase for 2022 as a result of rising energy costs. It didn't affect one in 2019 or 2020, but in 2021, but in 2022, as a result of the increases in energy costs and other external factors, they will be adjusting their rate. However, they are committed on having overall rates that will be lower than PG&E, and that's, I think, what's most important for me to highlight. Key accomplishments for MCE for 2021, I can go on forever, but I'll just list some of them right now. They include 15 local energy projects and including one of the largest public-private solar projects in the Bay Area. They've created innovative programs in energy resilience, EV infrastructure, and building electrification plants. They've delivered 90% carbon-free energy to over 1 million people and businesses this year. They gave out $4 million in energy efficient rebates and launched a flex market program that is now being replicated across the state. They've installed 1,000 EV charging ports in our communities. And on the equity front, and what's beneficial to Danville is to know that they've approved back in March a $10 million bill credit program to support vulnerable customers and small businesses that are struggling due to COVID. The current update on how that 10 million spend is being invested is, one, they have an MCE Care Credit Program that has helped 30,000 customers so far. They've also been successful in making sure that their customers take full advantage of what they call the Arrearage Management Program, which has already helped customers eliminate almost $1 million in energy debt. And other success stories as they've distributed free energy saving kits to families, free smart thermostats to families, and help families get weatherization updates. And every day of the week, MCE's got their crews out there conducting audits and retrofits to help our customers save energy. EV infrastructure, right now they have a program in place that basically provides $3,000 per installed port and technical assistance for projects with 2 to 20 ports. They dedicated $3 million to workforce development activities, connecting folks with green jobs. They've launched a new solar discount rate that gives income qualified folks 100% renewable energy with a 20% bill discount. So in summary, and to put it all, I guess, in words and bring it all home, MC has committed over $2 billion to get California renewable energy projects built, creating hundreds of good paying jobs and meeting the state SB 100 carbon reduction target 13 years early. So that's my update on MCE. It is a success story, and we look forward to continuing to support the growth of MCE.
Dave, thank you. That's a very thorough report. Thank you so much for that. And this will take us to our next item on the agenda, which I lost the actual number, but it's an update on the traffic report by Councilmember Morgan.
It's hard to follow those reports. Wow. So I just wanted to say that I want to do a shout out to Lisa Bobadilla and also Andy Dillard. They stepped in when we lost our traffic administrative coordinator, and we just recently hired a new one. Her first day was on December 6th. It's Kelly Fahey, which she's just jumped in right away. One thing to remember is with COVID, our number of riders is down, but our number that we can have on the buses, we are sold out. So it's great to know that our buses are full and running in full swing. The other thing to remember is that because of the fact that we have restrictions and masks and all that, that a lot of our buses right now aren't running at full capacity, but we have right now sold out buses of 1,800 riders. For high schools are sold out, and elementary and middle schools are about 1,200 riders from week to week. We also usually have a reserve of 3 buses, and we're down to 1. And the reason why is one's been in the shop. It's difficult to get parts right now with COVID. And also because there was an accident on 242, no children were injured, the bus was empty, but the driver was driving, no fault of her own. A car's got an accident and so-called hit her. And so now that bus is out of service probably for another 6 months. And last but not least, something that they didn't have when we were kids for sure, or when we had our children, are the RFID system cards that now will be able to tell the parents when their children get on the bus and when they exit the bus. And so it's a great tool, and that app will be available for our parents to receive as of January 1st. And that's it.
That last part, Renee, is really cool. I know all of us that have been on traffic a variety of times over the years, we're always waiting for that technology to catch up. So it's really exciting. So
very good.
Thank you for all reports. Thank you for your patience and passion. Thank all of you tonight for the passion. We should all go and enjoy happy holidays and a happy new year, knowing that we have done a good job this year getting us through COVID, particularly under the leadership of Mayor Morgan. A very challenging year. And again, as we all keep saying, unfortunately, it's not over, but we're learning how to adapt. And just to wish everybody in the staff, Joe, thank you for your leadership. Rob, Ewing, Marie, all of you, thank you so much. Any further business comments or anything from anybody?
Merry Christmas, everybody. Have a safe holiday.
Happy holidays.
Everybody. Great. Have a great Christmas.